Forge Master of Fuses. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 26, The Duke of Rose. Tang Fan and Brad were both of similar stature. The two sturdy men stared at him at the same time, and the people around them took a few steps back at the same time. But the desire for food and bloody plunder in their eyes was not concealed. Only one little girl was different. She hid behind a man in black, with only her head poking out. Her white and rosy face was inlaid with a delicate nose, a pair of big watery eyes and a small mouth, all with a smile. She was obviously ignorant of the world and was out of tune with the people around her. However, her delicate nose was constantly moving at this moment, her big watery eyes were staring at the bag in Tang Fan's hand without blinking, her small mouth was tightly closed, and her chin moved slightly, obviously swallowing saliva. Tang Fan remembered Tang Gang's words, when walking in the world, there are three kinds of people you must be careful of, the elderly, women, and children. Tang Fan pondered for a moment, then silently took out another bag of dried meat and handed it to the little girl. This is the last bag, there are no more. The little girl glanced at the man in black in front of her, and when the man in black nodded, the little girl put the bag in her arms with satisfaction, and then took out an energy stone and handed it to Tang Fan. Sister, you look like a good person, I'll give it to you. The little girl's words shocked everyone. Others, including Tang Fan, were shocked by the little girl's generosity. Only Brad and Tang Fan were shocked by the word sister. Tang Fan glanced at the man in black in front of the little girl. The man smiled at Tang Fan. Since she gave it to you, just take it. Tang Fan took the energy stone, put it into his space buckle with a smile, and took out a bag of biscuits and handed it over. I'm sorry to take advantage of you. This is my gift. If you like it, you can find a tenderloin and hind leg of a big-headed cow, and I will process it for you for free. When the little girl heard this, she jumped out from behind the man in black in surprise. Are you a chef? Tang Fan shook his head. There doesn't seem to be a chef major in the Blue Sea Mecha Academy. I just like to fiddle with food. The light in the little girl's eyes dimmed a little, and the feeling of disappointment was about to burst out. Is that so? The man in black reached out and rubbed the little girl's head, comforting her. Your space buckle is full of snacks, isn't it enough for you to eat? I'm here to take the exam, just let me go. The little girl pouted, looking reluctant. But Teacher Owen said that Blue Star has entered the exam season, and all space equipment will be affected. Before she finished speaking, the little girl seemed to suddenly realize something and covered her mouth fiercely, with a look of annoyance on her face. The man in black said unhappily, too much talk leads to mistakes. Do you know now? The little girl nodded and pulled the sleeve of the man in black. What should we do now? The man in black rubbed her head, squinted his eyes and looked around, and said coldly, everyone is knowledgeable and interesting. No one should talk about a little girl's unintentional mistake, right? As soon as these words came out, the restaurant fell into silence. 2 seconds later, there was a sudden and harsh sound of tableware being placed on a plate in the restaurant. Everyone's eyes were cast on the man in a white suit in the restaurant. The man wiped his mouth slowly and waved a napkin in his hand. Sorry to bother you. Please continue. Just pretend I don't exist. Although he said so, how could he continue what he had interrupted? What's more, someone revealed the identity of the boy in the white suit. Duke of Roses, a romantic-sounding name made the atmosphere of the entire restaurant even more solemn. Although Tang Fan didn't know why the man in the white suit was called the Duke of Roses, he knew from the reactions of the people around him that he might have come to the wrong place today. Go in or leave, this is a question. Before Tang Fan made a decision, the boy in the white suit called the Duke of Roses had already made the decision for him. I think your knife skills are pretty good. I wonder if I have the honor to see it. Tang Fan looked at the silence of the people around him and knew in his heart that he probably didn't have the right to refuse. However, groveling is not the style of the Tang family. He is not a cook of the Duke of Roses, so he still has to have the right attitude. Thank you for the compliment. I appreciate it. But this occasion is not suitable. This was the first time in his life that the Duke of Rose was rejected. His expression immediately became ugly. He looked at Tang Fan deeply, but Tang Fan was calm and neither humble nor arrogant. The Duke of Rose seemed to have found a new toy. There was a hint of separation in his eyes when he looked at Tang Fan. He knocked his hand on the table twice. Before he said anything, More than half of the people in the restaurant were gone. The Duke of Rose raised his eyebrows, looked deeply at the people who stayed, and finally his eyes fell on Tang Fan. Then what occasion do you think is more suitable? Tang Fan chose a table opposite the Duke of Rose, gently stroked the tabletop, and spread his hands. Although I am not a top chef, I also know that a good meal requires good ingredients, a good chef, a good scenery, good utensils, and a knowledgeable and interesting person to accompany you to get the true taste. Now, for you, it seems that none of these things are available, the Duke of Rose said. Oh, snapped his fingers, and the things on the table in front of him were removed in 3 seconds. Soon, 4 metal projection walls were erected around him and Tang Fan, and the two were immediately surrounded by gurgling water, drizzling rain and green bamboo. Now we have the beautiful scenery and the people who know and appreciate it. Now let's talk about the ingredients and utensils you want. The unexpected move of the Rose Duke really shocked Tang Fan, but since he had already encountered it, what else could he do? Of course, he would face it calmly. Food is never too fine, and sashimi is never too fine. Since the gentleman is interested in my knife skills, let's keep it simple and eat fish sashimi. The Rose Duke raised his eyebrows and smiled. It's just a meal, but you use the ancient Chinese proverb. It's a loss for foodies if you don't specialize in cooking. Faced with a compliment of the Rose Duke, Tang Fan just smiled and said nothing. These days, complimenting people is just a social etiquette. If you take it seriously, you will really lose. Seeing that Tang Fan did not accept the challenge, the Duke of Rose also stopped his performance and said with a smile, since the girl is so outstanding, this fish must also be outstanding to be worthy of your craftsmanship. What do you think of the legendary puffer fish? There are 3 or 2 peach blossoms outside the bamboo. The ducks know first when the spring river water is warm, the mugwort is all over the ground and the reed buds are short, which is when the puffer fish is about to come up. Speaking of eating puffer fish, it has been around since ancient times. It is said that when eating puffer fish, you won't give up even if you are slapped in the face, which means that even if someone slaps you hard, you will not be willing to let go. In the past, when technology was not developed, many people died of puffer fish poisoning every year. Nowadays, antidote drugs are so developed that eating puffer fish has become a trend among the rich. Puffer fish is hard to come by, and it is appropriate to describe it with the 3 words in the legend. I respect a gentleman's choice. Chapter 27 Fish Sashimi. As soon as Tang Fan finished speaking, a waiter came over and made a gesture to Tang Fan to come in. Following the waiter in a white shirt and black pants to the back kitchen, Tang Fan couldn't help but gasp as he looked at the dazzling array of ingredients and the zoo-like eating area. Can I use all of these? The waiter stood behind Tang Fan and said proudly, of course. This starship originally belonged to our Duke, but the Blue Sea Mecha Academy needed it, so out of courtesy, our Duke took time out of his busy schedule to run this trip for Din Zhang. As long as it can satisfy the Duke, just ask for anything you need. Tang Fan took a deep breath, put aside his distracting thoughts, picked up a knife that suited him from the kitchen, and selected a few beautiful plates. Then he slowly walked to the aquarium, aimed at a pufferfish, and quickly attacked. The pufferfish in Tang Fan's hand slightly shook its tail, as if it didn't understand how it ended up in Tang Fan's hands. The waiter behind Tang Fan was not a cute pufferfish. Seeing Tang Fan's skill in catching fish, he couldn't help but narrow his eyes. When a pufferfish is threatened, it can expand its body several times in a short time to scare off predators or make it difficult for predators to swallow it. The pufferfish in Tang Fan's hand was as well behaved as if it was in the water. This skill is not simple, and it is obviously practiced. I don't know what he practiced with. Anyway, this fast and accurate skill, whether used on fish or people, is basically a sure thing. Good technique, Tang Fan replied modestly while holding the fish. Basic operation. Tang Fan only said 4 words, and it was only enough to say 4 words. He could wait, but the pufferfish in his hand couldn't wait. Tang Fan picked up the pufferfish with his left hand, and quickly waved the kitchen knife he had just chosen with his right hand. He gently cut across the fish's belly and looked inside. Everything in the fish's belly fell to the side. Tang Fan lifted up the pufferfish and drained all the blood. In just a few seconds, only the skin and flesh of the pufferfish remained. But Tang Fan was not satisfied. He pointed the tip of the knife at the eyes of the pufferfish and cut it left and right. It looked so easy. Only the waiter behind him knew how important and difficult this was. After handling all this, Tang Fan put the pufferfish on the chopping board. The kitchen knife flew quickly. Before he could see clearly, A complete pufferfish skin was already placed on a small plate. Tang Fan nodded with satisfaction and turned on the faucet, letting the running water continuously wash the fish meat until the fish meat was clean and translucent. Tang Fan changed a chopping board again, laid the fish flat on the chopping board, pulled out the fish bones one by one, and looked at the flawless white jade fish meat with a satisfied smile. Tang Fan not only changed a chopping board, but also a kitchen knife. After 2 gestures, the knife quickly fell on the fish meat, and a piece of crystal clear fish meat was spread flat on the porcelain plate. After the fish meat was all put into the porcelain plate, Tang Fan quickly threw a freezing ball, freezing the meat and the plate together. White ice crystals quickly grew, and the fish meat curled up slightly. The fish sashimi looked like a blooming white lotus, which was extremely beautiful. Through the thin and transparent fish slices, in the hazy white mist, the color and texture of the green lotus plate below could still be vaguely seen. Tang Fan made a gesture of invitation to the waiter, and the waiter came back to his senses, quickly picked up the green lotus plate, and walked towards the restaurant. In an instant, all eyes were focused on the green lotus plate in the waiter's hand, but the waiter ignored these eyes. Seeing the waiter coming alone, the expression of the Rose Duke changed. "Where are the people?" The waiter smiled and pointed to the kitchen. "They are still dealing with the waste. They said they are responsible for the safety of other people's lives." The expression of the Rose Duke looked much better, and he took an antidote calmly and picked up the pointed chopstick slowly. With a slight sound, the fish meat was peeled off from the porcelain plate. The almost transparent fish meat looked more like jade than food through the light. The Duke of Rose nodded with satisfaction and put the piece of fish meat into his mouth. The fish meat was slightly cool when it entered his mouth. When the temperature of his mouth touched the fish meat, he didn't need to chew it too much. The fish meat had melted in his mouth. There was no fishy smell, only the fresh taste spread. At this moment, the Duke of Rose suddenly understood why so many people were chasing after puffer fish. A dish of puffer fish, with 12 petals, had all entered the Duke of Rose's mouth before Tang Fan had finished cleaning up the kitchen. Without any seasoning, the Duke of Rose ate it very seriously and was very satisfied. When Tang Fan finally cleaned up and walked to the front restaurant, he saw only an empty plate and the Duke of Rose's intoxicated expression. In someone else's territory, he couldn't eat the food he made, and had to look at the empty plate and wait for comments. Even so, Tang Fan could only touch his nose and accept it. Tang Fan felt that his requirements were not high. As long as the customer in front of him was satisfied and gave a good review, and didn't make his exam road blocked, he would be satisfied. Fortunately, the Duke of Rose had seen the world, and his fascination only lasted for 2 minutes before he sobered up. Looking at Tang Fan, and then looking at the empty plate in front of him, the Duke of Rose, who is always calm and self-assured, was a little embarrassed. A shy look flashed across his face, and the Duke of Rose supported his chin with both hands and spoke. "I understand the principle of being grateful to someone who has helped you. Since I have eaten the meal you cooked, I should also give you a corresponding reward. Tell me, what do you want?" Tang Fan pondered for a moment, and suddenly remembered something, and said with a smile, "Since you can lend the starship to the Blue Sea Mecha Academy, it means that you know the Blue Sea Mecha Academy very well. Then can you tell me what I will experience in this exam?" After hearing what Tang Fan said, the Duke of Rose couldn't help laughing. "You dare to take the Blue Sea Mecha Academy exam without knowing anything? Should I praise you for your courage? Or should I say you are stupid?" Tang Fan raised his eyebrows and smiled. "No matter which one it is, I am standing here. What's the difference?" The Duke of Rose nodded. "That's true. However, you know to ask me about this matter. Even if you are stupid, it can be said that stupid people have good luck. If you fail to get into the Blue Sea Mecha Academy, I welcome you to come to my house and cook for me. If nothing else, your fish sashimi is really good." Tang Fan smiled and didn't answer. However, he secretly complained in his heart, if his Mr. Tang Yang heard what the Duke of Rose said, and knew that the heir of the Tang family sword that he had trained for 15 years was used as a cook, I wonder what he would think. He would probably be so angry that he would go to fight with the Duke of Rose. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 28 Quick Questions and Answers. Seeing that Tang Fan was only smiling but not saying anything, the Duke of Roses did not mention hiring Tang Fan as a chef. Instead, he called the waiter who had just led Tang Fan and said to him, "Tell him about the entrance exam of the Blue Sea Mecha Academy so that he can be mentally prepared. I have not met anyone who can cook fish sashimi better than him. Don't let him fail." These words sounded harsh, but Tang Fan could only listen. The waiter knew the Duke of Rose's old habit and was afraid that he would continue to say something unpleasant. He quickly made a gesture of invitation to Tang Fan and took Tang Fan away. This time, the young waiter did not take him to the kitchen, but to a study. These days, paper things are precious, and yellowed pages are mostly cultural relics. The word study was presented to Tang Fan as a real object for the first time, and it was inevitable that he would be surprised. However, Tang Fan has always done a good job of managing his expression and quickly concealed it. Seeing Tang Fan's calmness in the face of praise or criticism, the waiter's smile on his face became more sincere. "Although my Duke asked me to tell you about the Blue Sea Mecha Academy exam, in fact, all those who have participated in this exam have signed a confidentiality agreement and cannot reveal too much. What I can tell you is very limited. No wonder there are so few topics about the Blue Sea Mecha Academy on the Star Network. In addition to the fact that most of the students who graduated from this school entered the military and could not be too publicized, the more important reason is probably this so-called confidentiality regulation." Tang Fan suddenly remembered the words of the foodie cutie and couldn't help asking, "Then, does the news that Blue Sea Star has entered the exam season and all space equipment will be affected belong to the scope of being talked about?" The waiter nodded. "Of course. Even the Duke dare not easily try to anger Blue Sea. And Blue Sea's final bottom line is leaking secrets. For leakers, Blue Sea will never stop." Tang Fan pondered for a moment. "Then where do we start?" The waiter pursed his lips. "You ask me and I answer. If we encounter a question that I don't know or can't answer, we will go directly to the next one." "Okay," Tang Fan nodded, and the quick question and answer session officially began. "What's the climate like on Blue Sea Star?" The average surface temperature of Blue Sea Star is maintained at around 25 degrees all year round, which should be very pleasant. But in fact, the residents of Blue Sea Star are not feeling well. Because Blue Sea Star has the largest temperature difference among known planets. During the day, the temperature in the direct sunlight is as high as 87, and at night when the sun is not shining, the temperature drops to -32. Therefore, both warm-keeping and cold-proof measures are necessary on Blue Sea Star. After hearing this answer, Tang Fan swallowed his saliva silently. If it is true that the foodie cutie said that Blue Sea Star has entered the exam season, all space equipment will be affected. As the waiter said, the temperature difference between day and night is so large. Tang Fan felt that he was really ignorant and fearless when he came to Blue Sea Star to apply for the exam. No wonder there are so many recooked meat outside. What is the highest level of star plants and star beasts on Blue Sea Star? As soon as Tang Fan asked this question, the waiter smiled. Looking at the waiter's smile, Tang Fan had a bad premonition in his heart. Blue Sea Star is quite special. In order to develop students' abilities, workers in various places have raised and cultivated star plants and star beasts of various levels. As long as you can count the names, Blue Sea Star has them. When Tang Fan heard this, he knew that he had asked in the wrong direction, and hurriedly asked, "What is the highest level of the star plants and star beasts in the examination area?" The waiter smiled and shook his head. "I can't answer this question for you, but I can give you a friendly reminder that the difficulty of star beasts and star plants is not necessarily proportional to their levels." This slightly mysterious sentence made Tang Fan suddenly enlightened. "Thank you." The waiter waved his hand nonchalantly. "Next, is Blue Star short of water?" When the waiter heard this question, he couldn't help but take a deep look at Tang Fan. Tang Fan rubbed his nose and laughed dryly. "There is a great shortage of water where I live, so I feel I need to ask this question specifically." The waiter nodded in understanding. "There is no shortage of water in Blue Star, but it is not easy to get enough drinking water. Since there is a shortage of water where you live, this question should not be difficult for you. After entering the exam season, in addition to the space equipment being affected, are there any other impacts? Next, what will the exam be about? Next." After several consecutive nexts, Tang Fan finally lost his patience. "I can't answer anything. What do you want me to ask? Is there anything else you can say?" The waiter nodded with a sly smile. "Blue Sea Star is half land and half ocean. You must be fully prepared. The entrance examination is divided into 3 rounds: written test, operation, and final assessment. Before the exam, all candidates must sign a life and death statement. Blue Sea Mecha Academy is not responsible for any casualties during the exam. The food at Blue Sea Mecha Academy is terrible, and your cooking skills should be of great help to you. As for the rest, I can't remember it for a while. Tang Fan wrote down these messages one by one in the notebook, and then asked his last question. I just saw a set of Alliance Star Beast Star Plant Encyclopedia over there. Can I make a copy of the electronic file? This question was too simple, and the waiter nodded in agreement without hesitation. Don't bother, I have a copy in my optical computer, and I can transfer it directly to you. The optical computer docking was very simple. It took only 3 minutes to transfer a set of Alliance Star Beast Star Plant Encyclopedia to Tang Fan's optical computer. If Tang Fan's optical computer was not too old, the version docking wasted a little effort, and it could actually be faster. When Tang Fan came out of the study and saw everyone's eager eyes and the smiling face of the Duke of Rose, Tang Fan realized that he was careless and fell into the trap of the Duke of Rose. Now, he stood up and told everyone that he had gone through so much hardship and only got a few words of information. Would anyone believe it? Especially when Johnson Brown, Hokey and Scorpion were hanging around the door in different postures, Tang Fan couldn't help but feel his scalp tingling. The only one who exuded goodwill was the foodie who exchanged energy stones for jerky with him. The desire for food, especially for fish sashimi, was clearly hanging on his face, ready to burst out. It seems that if he wants to win allies, he can only start with this little cutie. Even if he knows that the people on this starship are not good people, and this little cutie only looks innocent, as long as there is food as bait, this friendship should be able to last for a while. However, after practicing the Tang family knife for 15 years, he can only swing a kitchen knife now. How sad. How painful. Chapter 29 Internal Conflict. Having made up his mind, Tang Fan ignored the gazes that almost devoured him, waved at the foodie cutie, and walked towards Brad and Zhao Fan. Facing Brad and Zhao Fan's unfriendly gazes, Tang Fan remembered that before being taken away by the Duke of Rose, the cutie had called him sister. Facing the angry Brad and Zhao Fan, Tang Fan rarely felt the word tough. This matter is really not easy to explain. Internal conflicts should be resolved internally. Tang Fan's proposal was adopted. Brad and Zhao Fan walked towards Brad's room without saying a word. With a bang, all the curious eyes were shut out of the door. As soon as the door was closed, Brad got angry. Now, you can start to explain. Zhao Fan also nodded. Tang Fan looked at Brad and Zhao Fan's posture of a 3-court trial, and couldn't help but defend himself. First of all, I didn't say I was a boy, right? Secondly, you didn't ask me about my gender, right? So, we are both half responsible for your misunderstanding of my gender. Tang Fan, a bachelor, admitted his gender, which instantly destroyed Brad and Zhao Fan's worldview. They always felt that there was something strange about Tang Fan's words, but they couldn't tell. Seeing that the first attack was effective, Tang Fan immediately threw the second bomb. He silently lifted his overly long bangs, revealing his little face with a little baby fat. Clean and clear big eyes, a high nose bridge, rosy thin lips, and a beautiful face that was not inferior to any popular star directly gave Brad and Zhao Fan a heart-wrenching blow. Tang Fan looked at the dazed expressions of the two teenagers, smiled bitterly, and sent out the final killer move. We all came from the 9th level planet. You should know that it is difficult to be a human being, it is even more difficult to be a woman, and it is even more difficult to be a beautiful woman. Having a beautiful face but not having absolute strength and power is a disaster. Living is a skill and an art. On a 9th level planet, it is normal for a person without a household registration to disappear or die overnight. I still want to live and live well. Brad and Zhao Fan were killed instantly by Tang Fan's last blow. After a long while, Brad found his voice again. Don't think that I will forgive you if you say that. You have deceived me for so long. Without 10 packs of jerky, this matter is not over. No, 20 packs, you don't understand the world of foodies. There is nothing that jerky can't solve. If 10 packs don't work, then 20 packs will do. Faced with Brad's unbridled betrayal, what else can Zhao Fan do? Of course, give a discount. I'm cheaper, 10 packs are enough. Faced with such a reasonable request, Tang Fan, of course, ceded land and paid compensation to ensure the purity of friendship. It's so simple and unpretentious. He solved the internal dispute directly. I have seen Tang Fan's true face. Brad looked at Tang Fan with a face full of resentment, holding his stomach. On the face, the 3 words "please feed" were written. Tang Fan sighed, took out a nutrient from the space buckle and handed it to him. "This is the best and fastest." Brad took it with grievance, and the look in his eyes was really unique. Tang Fan shook his head, took out the kitchen utensils from the space buckle, took out a huge low-quality white rice, broke off a small piece, and carefully made porridge for his childhood sweetheart. Seeing Tang Fan's actions, Brad hurried forward and held Tang Fan's hand. "Afan, although the porridge you cook is also very delicious, it's not good to drink porridge every day. Let's change the way we do it and have a meal, okay?" Tang Fan glanced at Brad and sighed. Just this time, and never again. Brad knew that Tang Fan agreed to his request, and immediately let Tang Fan go with satisfaction. Brad drank the bland nutritional supplement while watching Tang Fan prepare the food. Simple budgie eggs, honey spicy chicken wings, nut spinach, fish-flavored eggplant, and the most ordinary seaweed cuckoo egg soup were placed on the table one by one, and the rice in the pot was just right. Brad couldn't wait to rush over, add a big bowl of rice for himself, and also a bowl for Tang Fan, and then sat down. Zhao Fan and others, do it yourself, have enough food and clothing. People are omnivores, but Brad is obviously mutated, he is a pure carnivore. His chopsticks can turn and always linger on meat. The first move was to rush to the largest chicken wing. The first bite of the chicken tasted ecstasy. The moment the sweet skin was bitten, the fat burst from the inside out on the tip of the tongue, and the tender white chicken bounced in the mouth, followed by the unforgettable taste of spices, sweet with a little salty, salty and fresh with a little fragrance. The taste made people want to swallow their tongues. But Brad didn't have time to savor it. There were two strong rivals on the table. One bite on the left, one bite on the right, and one bite after another. In just 3 seconds, 2 chicken bones were placed cleanly on the table, and Brad was already heading for the next chicken wing. Even if Tang Fan did something too much, with a skill, Brad would never be angry for more than a meal. He just has no ambition. With Brad's speed, Zhao Fan didn't care about his image and joined the ranks of grabbing food. It wasn't until the two of them had eaten so much that their stomachs were round and they couldn't even stand up, lying on the chair holding their stomachs and not moving, like pregnant women for 5 or 6 months, that their mouths regained the ability to speak. "Good, nonsense, what often makes must be delicious, I ate too much without realizing it." "Me too." Tang Fan rolled his eyes, thinking that the two people in front of him were talking too much nonsense. After eating only 1 chicken wing, 2 bird eggs, 3 bites of eggplant, 5 bites of spinach, and a small bowl of soup, Tang Fan, who was barely half full, stood up and quietly cleaned up the table. "And these have always been Brad's job." Brad smiled embarrassedly. "Aw Fan, leave these aftermath to me. I'll come and clean up after I digest a little." Tang Fan paused to clean up the table, happily gave up the work of cleaning up, sat down, and knocked on the table. "Now that the internal contradictions have been resolved, let's discuss the external contradictions. I don't know much information, and there are only 5 in summary. Blue Sea Star has entered the exam season, and all space equipment will be affected. This news is true. The temperature difference between day and night on Blue Sea Star is large. The temperature in direct sunlight during the day is as high as 87 degrees Celsius, and at night when the sun is not shining, the temperature drops to -32 degrees Celsius. Both warm-keeping and cold-proof measures are necessary. Blue Sea Star is half land and half ocean, with rich and complete species. An adequate preparation is needed. The entrance examination is divided into 3 rounds: written test, operation, and final assessment. Before the exam, all candidates must sign a life and death statement. The Blue Sea Mecha Academy is not responsible for any casualties that occur during the exam. After hearing Tang Fan's explanation, Brad and Zhao Fan's expressions changed. Brad spoke first. "The space equipment is affected, and we have to equip so many things. This is a difficult task." Zhao Fan nodded. "Food, clothing, housing and transportation are all problems." Brad patted Zhao Fan on the shoulder and said with a smile, "Follow Afan, there's meat to eat. With our Afan here, I have never worried about food." Zhao Fan glanced at Tang Fan, who nodded. "As long as star beasts and star plants are handled properly, they are good ingredients. As long as you bring enough drinking water, you don't have to worry too much about food. But in other aspects, I'm not too sure." Chapter 30, Obsessed with Learning. Zhao Fan pursed his lips and said seriously, "The girl said that Blue Star has entered the exam season, and all space equipment will be affected, not that all space equipment cannot be used. Aw Fan, I think we can start from this aspect and make preparations for both situations. A wise man will make mistakes. Tang Fan did not expect that such a smart person like him would miss such important information. This is just our guess and has not been confirmed. However, it can be regarded as our backup plan. We can experimentally place enough drinking water and food, as well as protective clothing and sleeping bags. If this matter is feasible enough, Zhao Fan, you will have made a great contribution. Zhao Fan scratched his head and smiled embarrassedly. I still have a little immature suggestion. If the space equipment cannot be opened, the metro will inevitably be affected. The school will definitely take this into consideration. The level of the Warcraft magic plant should not be too high. Tang Fan nodded, took out 10 nutrients and lined them up on the dining table, then sat on the small table near the window. You continue to digest the food, and I will also digest the knowledge. After that, Tang Fan clicked on the set of Alliance Star Beast star plants that was copied from the waiter, which was thick enough to kill the star beasts, and read it bit by bit. Seeing this scene, Brad was disheartened. Excellence is a habit. Wandering in the ocean of knowledge and sucking the rain and dew of knowledge, Tang Fan only has learning in his eyes and heart. Tang Fan loves learning, and learning makes him happy. As long as Tang Fan is obsessed with learning, what is eating, drinking water, and sleeping? He can forget all of them. Tang Fan is obsessed with learning and can't extricate himself, so Brad and Zhao Fan can only chew on the nutrients. Zhao Fan's nutrients are self-confident, and the nutrients on the table are enough for Brad to eat for 2 or 3 days. In other words, Tang Fan plans to stay in seclusion for 2 or 3 days. This is undoubtedly bad news. No wonder Tang Fan agreed so happily when Brad strongly requested to eat white rice. Brad hugged his bulging belly and wanted to cry. If I had known earlier, I would not eat so much. It would be great to save half and eat it tomorrow. Unfortunately, there is no regret medicine in the world. Brad stood at the dining table for 10 minutes, then quickly cleaned up the tables, chairs, pots and pans, and tidied up the house. Even so, Brad couldn't get rid of his belly that looked like he was 5 months pregnant. Seeing that his 8 abdominal muscles turned into 1, Brad gritted his teeth and simply did the 128 basic physical exercises promoted by the Alliance. Zhao Fan also moved when he saw this. In the small space, the 2 burly men bumped into each other from time to time. But even so, the 2 of them didn't dare to touch Tang Fan. Casters are not to be messed with, especially a caster who can cook. After all, the mechas need to be built and repaired by others, and the energy source of food needs to be provided by others. Besides, they are studying hard. If you can't study, at least you should not disturb them. When Zhao Fan met Brad for the 138th time, Zhao Fan finally couldn't help it. They are better than you and more serious than you, aren't you ashamed? Brad heard this kind of words too many times and had long been accustomed to it. Why should I be ashamed? Aren't you with me? We are both C-level physical fitness and have just reached the passing line of mental strength. Do you have the nerve to say that to me? Zhao Fan's eyes almost popped out when he heard this. How do you know my qualifications? Brad curled his lips. I have eyes, I can see. There are 128 basic physical skills. The first 64 are compulsory for elementary school, and the last 64 are compulsory for middle school. They are free to download on the Star Internet. They are the basic training methods for national physical training. It is such a set of physical training methods, but it is not as simple as you think. Before the age of 5, practice the first 64 basic physical skills to 100% completion, and the potential can reach the top SSS level, and then decrease year by year. If the first 64 basic physical skills have not been practiced to 100% completion by the age of 12, this person's physical skills are basically hopeless. Correspondingly, before the age of 12, practice the 128 basic physical skills to 100% completion, and the potential can reach the top SSS level, and then decrease year by year. You are 17 this year, and you can complete 128 basic physical techniques at 3 times the speed, with a completion rate of 100%. I can do the same next year, or even better. So, we are definitely brothers in distress. Zhao Fan looked at Brad in shock, muttering to himself, you can summarize such a law, you are definitely wrong. I thought he was a bronze, but he turned out to be a king. No. With this guy's IQ, it is impossible to summarize such a law. Admit it. It was Tang Fan who told you. Brad laughed. I didn't expect you to be so smart that you can even see this. Zhao Fan rolled his eyes and looked up at the sky. He didn't want to tell Brad that it was not because he was smart, but because Brad was too stupid, so stupid that he could only follow Tang Fan's ass. Of course, only Tang Fan would pamper Brad so much and tell him such a key research result. Or maybe, in Tang Fan's eyes, this research result is not so important for a genius like Tang Fan? Thinking of this, Zhao Fan couldn't help but cast an envious and jealous look at Tang Fan. Envious of his talent, and also envious of his friendship with Brad. In order not to turn this envy into hatred, Zhao Fan walked to the door, opened a crack, and took a sneak peek. With just one glance, Zhao Fan was frightened by the countless pairs of concerned eyes and slammed the door shut. Brad was shocked by Zhao Fan's appearance. When he knew the reason, the two brothers immediately made a decision: they would never step out of the door before the starship arrived at a blue sea star. As for eating, drinking, defecating, urinating, and sleeping, they would overcome it and squeeze together. As for how to pass the time? For the brothers with well-developed limbs and simple minds, the 128 basic physical techniques were enough for them to play for a while. As for the rest of the time, it became a time to show off the family's unique skills, discuss and learn with each other, and make progress together. As for Tang Fan, who was considered not to be able to walk out of the book, he occasionally came back to his senses from the book. After all, the docking and departure of the starship were noisy, and Tang Fan was not a dead person, so he would be disturbed more or less. Whenever Tang Fan came back from the book and saw the harmonious and friendly scene of Brad and Zhao Fan making progress together, he would be kind enough to give them an extra meal to encourage them. Because of this little encouragement, Brad and Zhao Fan became more motivated and seemed to be eager to teach them all their unique skills. Whenever Tang Fan finished cooking, he would sit aside and listen attentively. Chapter 31 Arrival. At first, Zhao Fan naively thought that Tang Fan was just listening when he was bored. But when Tang Fan listened in on a class, he suddenly said something shocking. This simple sentence opened up Zhao Fan's doubts for many years, broke his bottleneck, and successfully promoted him from C+ to B. After Zhao Fan kept asking, he finally learned from Brad that Tang Fan, who he had always thought was malnourished, was actually a freak with double C+ in physical and mental strength. Moreover, this was just a conclusion drawn from a random test on StarNet when Tang Fan turned 15, and it was not necessarily true and reliable. In an instant, Zhao Fan was completely possessed by the sourness of the sour. Why is there such a big gap between someone's 15 years old and my 15 years old? Brad patted Zhao Fan, who was stunned after knowing the truth, and comforted him. Brother, you still spend too little time with Tang Fan. Only if you stay with him long enough, you will know that this is just Tang Fan's daily operation. As long as it happens to Tang Fan, nothing needs to be too surprising. For example, in a 10-day voyage, he should be able to read the complete set of Alliance Star Beast star plans that is thick enough to kill the star beasts, etc. Zhao Fan did not comment on Brad's fanboy behavior. Although he admitted that Tang Fan was very strong, it was not as exaggerated as Brad said. In a 10-day voyage, read the entire set of Alliance Star Beast star plans? Why didn't he say that Tang Fan's potential has reached the pinnacle of SSS level? When the voyage entered the 10th day, in a deep darkness, a crystal planet with blue and green traces intertwined, wrapped in a thin layer of water blue gauze appeared in front of everyone. So beautiful and flawless, transparent and crystal. The light blue brought her a quiet beauty, and the same lines made her look more vicissitudes. Mysterious and unpredictable, beautiful and intriguing. The white satellites around her dimmed instantly, like fish eyes to pearls. The girl by the window finally turned off her light brain and quietly admired the beautiful scenery. Brad and Zhao Fan, who had just been fighting fiercely, finally ended the battle and were also attracted to the window by the beautiful scenery. For a moment, everyone was attracted by the beautiful scenery and the room was quiet. Until a gurgling sound broke the silence, everyone came back to their senses from the beautiful scenery. Brad held his stomach awkwardly and smiled at Tang Fan and Zhao Fan embarrassedly. Sorry, I really didn't mean it. Tang Fan glanced at Brad's stomach, nodded, patted Brad's shoulder, and resigned himself to cooking for Brad. This time, when Tang Fan took out a huge inferior white rice, washed it and made porridge, Brad finally didn't say a word. Zhao Fan nudged Brad with his elbow and cast a puzzled look, as if asking Brad, why didn't you say anything this time? Brad coughed softly, put on a serious expression, and said seriously, the stomach that has only taken nutritional supplements for a long time cannot bear a large amount of food, so it can only start with light white porridge. Too much is not enough, Tang Fan glanced at Brad and nodded with a smile. Since you also know this truth, then you should restrain yourself from eating more than 3 bowls of white porridge today, and replace the rest with nutritional supplements, okay? Brad looked at the rice grains in front of him that were almost like solid glue and almost melted. He imagined that they slowly returned to the sweetness in his mouth, passed through his esophagus, and warmed his stomach. Then thinking about Tang Fan's cruel 3-bowl limit, Brad nodded like a hero. Then, silently from his space buckle, he took out the largest bowl he had prepared, which was generally used to hold soup in a family. Is there such a thing? Zhao Fan was stunned when he looked at Brad's bowl. Tang Fan, on the other hand, had a line of words written on his face. I knew it would be like this. Because of this days, Zhao Fan obviously fell behind. When Brad swallowed half of the bowl of porridge, Zhao Fan reacted and served the porridge. The porridge was stewed so hard that you could hardly see the rice grains. It was as smooth as rice milk and didn't need him to chew at all. The moment it flowed into the throat, the most primitive rice fragrance gradually spread, and a warm feeling emanated from the inside out, soothing the stomach and the heart. It was as if the wind in March blew, bringing the fragrance of grass and the gentleness of running water, moistening the heart. This is a bowl of porridge that heals everything, and it is also a bowl of porridge that people can't stop eating. No wonder Brad changed to a big bowl. This guy probably knew the power of this white porridge to soothe the people's hearts. Zhao Fan swallowed the porridge in the bowl in 2 mouthfuls, changed to a big bowl without hesitation, and served himself another bowl. This time, there was still not a drop left. Tang Fan slowly poured himself a bowl of soup, and watched Brad and Zhao Fan scramble for the last bit of soup. When there was not a grain of rice or a scrap left in the pot or the bowl, Brad and Zhao Fan collapsed on their chairs with satisfaction. Brad, who had eaten and drunk his fill, looked at Tang Fan and asked confidently, have you finished reading the book? Tang Fan nodded. Although I haven't practiced it, I should have no problem with magic beasts and magic plants within level 4. After I enroll, I will go to Blue Sea Star more often, and I should be able to match most of the star beasts and star plants. Zhao Fan looked at Brad and Tang Fan, who were discussing quite enthusiastically. The slap in the face came too fast, like a tornado. Fortunately, I didn't say what was in my heart. In order not to hurt his self-esteem again, Zhao Fan simply changed the topic and led the topic from Tang Fan to Blue Sea Mecha Academy. This topic was exactly what Brad wanted. With the expectation of the Blue Sea Mecha Academy, Brad and Zhao Fan discussed excitedly until 12 o'clock. Finally, under Tang Fan's order, they stopped discussing and fell asleep. After all, the 3 of them had never seen what the exam of the Blue Sea Mecha Academy was like. No one knew what was waiting for them after getting off the starship. Therefore, it was very important for them to maintain sufficient physical strength. And sleep is definitely one of the best ways to maintain physical strength. The other is food. At 8 o'clock the next morning, the starship arrived at the Blue Sea Star on time. Tang Fan thought about the tens of thousands of rooms on the starship and was not in a hurry at all. He fed Brad and Zhao Fan with white porridge. After ensuring everyone's physical strength, the 3 of them came out as the tail. Unexpectedly, in this situation, they also met acquaintances, the foodie cutie and the man in black who was inseparable from her. Tang Fan originally planned to ignore it and walk past. I didn't expect that the foodie was so outgoing. Before Tang Fan could react, the cutie had already jumped in front of him. Beautiful sister, we meet again. Chapter 32 Jealousy. Faced with the enthusiastic girl, Tang Fan could only give up his plan and nodded calmly. Hello. The girl was not defeated by Tang Fan's indifference, and still greeted him with a smile. Beautiful sister, what dish did you make for the Duke of Rose that day? It looked very good. This matter was not a secret. Seeing that the girl took the initiative to leak a key information, Tang Fan also confessed it openly. Fish sashimi. These 2 simple words made the girl very excited. She pulled the sleeve of the man in black and shook it. Look, I guessed it right. What the little sister made was the legendary Maid's Golden Plate carp sashimi. The man in black raised his eyebrows and said lightly, that can't be carp. The little girl's mouth immediately curled up to the sky. The little sister said that she made fish sashimi. The fish sashimi in the Maid's Golden Plate carp sashimi. Right. Little sister, Tang Fan did not expect that. He just said 2 simple words, and the war burned on him. He took a half step back, and put a little distance between himself and the 2 people who were staring at him. After he felt that his life and property were protected, he spoke. There are 38 kinds of fish sashimi that can be eaten. such as fish moi two-color sashimi, red silk crystal sashimi, fresh shrimp oof sashimi, carp sashimi, sandfish sashimi, jellyfish sashimi, three treasures sashimi, etc. The one I made that day is called binking yuji. It is made of pufferfish, not carp. The black-clothed man raised his mouth slightly and gave the little girl a look that said I told you it wasn't, and the little girl was so angry that she raised her foot and stomped on his boots and turned around vigorously. The little girl's petite body would not cause any harm to the man with both physical strength and energy, but the desire to survive still made him grin. Seeing that the man had learned a lesson, the little girl was satisfied and moved her little feet away from his feet, jumped in front of Tang Fan, and introduced herself. Beautiful sister, you know so much? Those dishes sound delicious. Let's study them together when we have time. My name is Qin Yi, and I'm a pharmacist. See you again, please give me your advice. It's always better to have more friends than more enemies. Thinking about the way people in the restaurant looked at him that day, even if Tang Fan didn't like socializing, he could only cheer up, put on a smile, and be forced to work. Hello. My name is Tang Fan, and I'm going to apply for the foundry department. The little girl pursed her lips, feeling a little aggrieved. You are so clever and dexterous. I thought you would be a member of the pharmacy department like me. Unexpectedly, you are from the foundry department. I don't know if it's too late for me to change departments now, in order to have a bite of food and to get closer to the chef. This little girl actually planned to give up the pharmacy she had studied for nearly 20 years and switch to the foundry department. What kind of foodie spirit is this? Not to mention Tang Fan, even Brad, who is also a foodie, was stunned. The man in black couldn't stand it anymore, stretched out his arm and shook Qin Yi's shoulder, and said unhappily, Miss Qin Yi, please sober up and face the reality that your physical strength has just passed the line and you can't even hold the transmission shaft. Give up the stupid behavior of changing departments, okay? Instead of wasting time on this kind of thing, it's better to make 2 more potions and exchange them for some snacks to sweeten your mouth. I think this is more promising. Qin Yi was ruthlessly complained by her childhood sweetheart, as if a basin of cold water was poured on her, and she quickly sobered up. After being depressed for only 3 seconds, Qin Yi immediately regained her smiling appearance and pestered Tang Fan to exchange the potion for Tang Fan's snacks, jerky. Tang Fan was moved, but he didn't dare to act. The jerky he promised to Brad and Zhao Fan was still on the account. Supporting a foodie like Brad, let alone jerky, the food reserves are almost empty. But Qin Yi's entanglement skills were really amazing. Tang Fan had no choice but to reveal his true colors to Qin Yi. I don't have much food in my hands, and I really don't have any dried meat. If you have the raw material, the meat of a big-headed cow, I can also help you process it. Of course, I will charge some processing fees appropriately. Qin Yi's eyes lit up when she heard this. She immediately let Tang Fan go and went to entangle the man in black. The man seemed to enjoy this feeling very much, without any impatience, and kept bargaining with the girl. In the end, the girl still won. She happily took out 2 boxes of potions from her space buckle and handed them to the man in black, and exchanged them for a whole fan of big-headed cow beef from the man in black. Looking at the big fan, Tang Fan estimated that there could be 500 kilograms of beef, and his mouth twitched. Is this going to tire him to death? In an instant, Tang Fan felt the sinister malice of the man in black. He is just a cook. He just takes money and helps people get rid of disasters. He has no intention of taking away people's love. Brother, do you really want to do that? Is it really necessary? Tang Fan has not moved yet, but Brad, a foodie, is anxious. Looking at the little girl's small arms and legs, she can't hold a big slab of beef at all. This silly boy actually ignored the murderous look of the man in black and took it for the little girl. For a moment, Tang Fan felt that he was about to suffocate. But Brad didn't feel anything at all. He held a slab of beef in one hand and was able to bargain with Qin Yi calmly. Little girl, don't underestimate this beef, but half of it is bone. Most of the remaining half is water. It's good to get 1/5 of it. We still have to pay for the ingredients, energy stones, and labor. I estimated that I'll give you 80 kilograms, and the remaining 20 kilograms will be the processing fee. How about that? Qin Yi counted on her fingers and said reluctantly, then you must guarantee that my 80 kilograms of jerky will be as delicious as the last time I ate it. Brad swore and took the business for Tang Fan. The communication method of the 2 foodies is different and unique, but also very effective. Seeing Brad carrying the beef and running towards Tang Fan without even looking at Qin Yi, the black-clothed man's face finally returned to the number one expression. Tang Fan, whose alarm was lifted, breathed a sigh of relief, hurriedly put the beef into the space buckle, nodded to Qin Yi and the black-clothed man, and quickly left the place of trouble with Brad and Zhao Fan. Mom. The jealous person who is always jealous is really terrible. Unless necessary, he doesn't want to deal with such a person in his life. Chapter 33, A Show of Power. Qin Yi looked at Tang Fan's running pace, and couldn't help but turned her head and glared at the man in black. Mr. George Black, you scared my favorite chef. If I don't eat the food I like, the consequences, for this threat, George, the man in black, was really afraid. Offending a pharmacist, especially a pharmacist who is obviously more skilled in poisons and regards food as more important than anything else, is simply a powerful deterrent. However, our character setting can collapse. Didn't you just get 80 kilograms of dried meat, and it's not enough for you to eat? Qin Yi curled her lips, looking unhappy. Although the beautiful sister promised to give me 80 kilograms of dried meat, she didn't say when to give it to me. You know the exam of the Blue Sea Mecha Academy, and I have no idea when I can eat dried meat. When George, the man in black, heard this, the corners of his mouth couldn't help twitching. Yes. The exam of the Blue Sea Mecha Academy is really too perverted. If it weren't for Dean Lan, he wouldn't suffer this punishment. Thinking of Dean Lan, George half-hugged and half-embraced Qin Yi, quickened his pace and walked outside. The port of Blue Star is much larger than that of Sangzi Star. With George's strength, he trotted for more than 10 minutes before he walked out of the port. Then, he ran into Tang Fan and his three companions. Qin Yi smiled and waved to the three people, and pulled George to stand next to them. George did not object, because the huge playground was full of people, and it didn't matter where they stood. Tang Fan, at least she was a girl, and a girl he knew. Beautiful sister, what's going on? Tang Fan shook his head stiffly under the scrutiny of people around him. Although he decided to restore his daughter's body, facing the scrutiny of others, Tang Fan always felt that they were looking at a monster that was neither male nor female, which made him feel very uncomfortable. It was more uncomfortable than the jealous look that took her as a love rival. Since others made him uncomfortable, he could make others more uncomfortable. Tang Fan rolled his eyes and smiled. I don't like to owe others things. Anyway, I have nothing to do now, so I'll cook a pot of braised beef and taste it first. How about it? George glanced at the people around him, thinking about the rich taste of the braised beef, and couldn't help but look at Tang Fan deeply. This woman is not a coward who won't fight back or scold. However, this kind of open, small revenge, with a little girl's willfulness, is more playful and cute than the hard look. George decided to see through it but not say it. If anyone dared to snatch his little King Mai's meat jerky, he would let them know that his title of Capital Star Demon Wolf was not for nothing. George protected his jumping little King Mai with his arms and nodded to Tang Fan imperceptibly. Qin Yi, a foodie, didn't realize Tang Fan's purpose at all, and raised his hands and feet to show his agreement. Brad also ran over quickly, rubbing his hands nervously, and couldn't wait to help. Only Zhao Fan realized something. He looked at Tang Fan, then at George, the man in black. His hand involuntarily fell on the space button of the mecha, and his eyes were full of vigilance. Tang Fan took out his pot with a smile, and then took out a big-headed cow that Qin Yi gave him. He cut 5 ribs with a knife, cleaned them, and put them in the pot. Boil them, cool them. Squeeze out the blood, put them in the clean pot, add Tang Fan's exclusive 18 flavors of seasoning, appropriate salt, and stew them under high pressure. After a while, a large amount of the aroma of the marinade began to spread over the playground, and the fragrance spread 10 miles. Most people slept all night, and in the morning they hurriedly took a nutrient supplement and hurriedly walked off the starship. Being left out by the teachers of the Blue Sea Mecha Academy for more than an hour, facing the rising temperature, the whole person was like a flower and grass that had been exposed to the sun for 3 days, withered and lifeless. Now the fragrance came over, just like a few drops of water splashed into the boiling oil pan. The whole playground immediately boiled up, and everyone looked for the source of the fragrance with one mind. The people around Tang Fan had hooked eyes, as if their entire souls were sucked away by Tang Fan, the pot beside him. Not only the students on the playground were restless, but the teachers of the Blue Ocean Mecha Academy were also uncomfortable. The food in the cafeteria of the Blue Ocean Mecha Academy, everyone who has eaten it knows that it is not bad to describe. All the teachers and students of the Blue Ocean Mecha Academy would rather drink nutritional supplements than go to the cafeteria. Whenever the Blue Ocean Mecha Academy is on vacation, all the teachers and students are like star beasts out of the cage, grabbing various aircrafts at the first time, and collectively fleeing to the nearest food planet Basil Star, to have a big meal. Then, when school starts, they are reluctant to pack all kinds of food from various food planets to spend a long semester. Of course, there are many unfortunate people, such as teachers and students who cannot take a holiday because their academic performance is not up to standard, or who have special tasks, such as enrollment, and they are not eligible for this benefit. Because no one is willing to share the food they have collected with anyone. Brothers, best friends, and even boyfriends and girlfriends are not allowed. But now, some people are poisoning and cooking food in public. Those who know say that they are hanging out the candidates to sharpen their will. Those who don't know think that a certain candidate is sharpening their will and making them progress and grow. This is intolerable. Several invigilators really couldn't hold on. After discussing it, they decided to throw aside the rule of hanging students out for half a day and quickly drive them in to take the exam. When this group of candidates entered the examination room, they confiscated the tools for committing crimes and then sucked out this tempting smell. Of course, it would be even better if they could help eliminate the evidence presented in court. So, just as more and more people were drooling and everyone was looking at Tang Fan with more and more unfriendly eyes, the assembly whistle suddenly sounded. The playground immediately became a mess. Only Tang Fan opened the lid of the pot calmly, took a look at his braised beef, and said to Qin Yu with a little regret, "It's a little off, a little hard, do you want more?" Qin Yu had been watching the pot for a full hour, and when it was about to be served, it turned out like this, and her eyes were almost blazing with anger. Hearing Tang Fan say that the braised beef was a little hard, but it was still edible, the little girl's anger was mostly gone, and she nodded and said quickly, "Yes, yes, yes. Isn't it just a little hard? I have good teeth and can chew it." Tang Fan picked up the braised beef with a little regret and divided it into 3 portions. After weighing 2 portions, he gave them to Qin Yi, and divided 1 portion into 10 or so small bags, which Tang Fan stuffed into Brad and Zhao Fan's hands. Then, he rinsed the pot clean and walked towards the assembly point. Chapter 34 Special Registration. Tang Fan's slow and steady movements were fully displayed in front of the invigilators through the monitor, making this group of elites so angry that they fell backwards. This guy is not here to take the exam, but to have a picnic. The key is that you cleaned up so cleanly, leaving no meat residue for these teachers. Do you still know what it means to respect teachers? But when Tang Fan's hot pot water was poured heavily on one of the hidden cameras, accompanied by the sound of electricity, Tang Fan's face turned into a snowflake and disappeared. The teachers realized that Tang Fan could be even more excessive. The motto of the Blue Sea Mecha Academy is, "Don't wait for a slap in the face, and don't be vague when pretending." Since someone dared to poison the Blue Sea Mecha Academy, they must teach this daring candidate a lesson that he will never forget. The commander-in-chief waved his hand, and an instructor wearing a navy blue military uniform and with an indifferent face walked out from the group of instructors. The bright copper buttons of the military uniform were meticulously fastened all the way to the discipline button below the neck, making the neck look even more slender. The wide rhino leather belt outlined the perfect waistline. The straight trousers set off the long legs that seemed to be 1.8 meters long. The whole person standing there, without saying a word, could give people a huge pressure. Dong Gaio, 01, go meet those rookies. The cold-faced instructor Dong Gaio saluted properly and answered loudly, "Dong Gaio understand." The chief instructor waved his hand again, and the cold-faced instructor turned around and walked out. There was no way. Who made him have the reputation of a cold-faced instructor and the elegant name of the flower of Gaoling? The living signboard of the Blue Sea Mecha Academy, the most beautiful boy with the best appearance? Who else could he send if he didn't go out to meet guests? Dong Gaio obviously didn't like this showing up task very much. He drove the aircraft to park above the examinee, took out a loudspeaker that was taller than him from the space buckle, and raised it. The next second, his cold voice came out from the loudspeaker. "Attention, all 13,563 candidates present. Please go to the 16 blue gates around the playground and collect your numbers and backpacks in turn. Candidates who do not receive numbers and backpacks within 30 minutes will be deemed to have automatically given up this exam." I repeat, the loudspeaker was powerful. The candidates within a radius of 1 kilometer around instructor number 1 felt their ears buzzing and their heads dizzy. This also indirectly affected their performance. When they came to their senses, there was no one around. All the candidates rushed to the 16 blue gates and surrounded them. At this time, everyone didn't care about hiding and took out their best skills. For a while, mechas and flying boards flew together, aircraft and mechanical arms were rampant, and there was only one goal: the blue gate. The teachers of the Blue Sea Mecha Academy also showed their professionalism at this moment. No matter how the candidates squeezed into the blue gate, they would hang a backpack on their bodies. The backpack was empty except for a numbered badge. Tang Fan was originally in a marginal area, but who would have thought that there was also a blue gate? The one who is close to the water gets the moon first. Tang Fan stepped on the flying board, took Zhao Fan and dragged Brad, and passed a blue gate without any effort. Holding the empty backpack, Tang Fan had a bad feeling in his heart. During the exam, he could not bring only such a backpack. Tang Fan cast a puzzled look at George, the man in black, who was not very familiar to him. Unexpectedly, George nodded to him affirmatively, confirming his guess. The words "oh my god" just rushed out of Tang Fan's mouth. George's expression was instantly broken, and his eyes were full of astonishment when he looked at Tang Fan. "Classmate, you seem to be a girl. Is it really okay to say such a thing in public?" Watching Tang Fan dragging two human-shaped luggage and rushing through the blue gate first, the instructor Dongwei, 07, also felt that he was "oh my god." Instructor Dongwei, who was busy with work and indignant, could not suppress his inner anger and made his immature suggestion to the internal communication device. Dongwei, 07, suggests that the space equipment restriction order be issued in advance. Where else can you put a pot of braised beef except in the space buckle? Let you see it but not eat it, and see if you dare to be greedy for me next time. Yao Gao, 19, seconded, "If I can't have it, you can't have it either." Lianglian, 22, seconded, "Beef, my favorite. Out of sight, out of mind." Amid the seconding voices, the instructors once again reached a consensus. The chief instructor issued the latest order with a serious face. "Donggaio, 01, Donggaio, the space equipment restriction order will be issued in advance." Instructor number 1 received the order and a rare smile appeared on his face. Donggaio received. When the half-hour countdown reminder sounded, the blue door closed without hesitation, and Donggaio's cold voice sounded at the same time. "Attention to the 8,627 candidates who have passed the registration. Please organize the materials you will use in the next 10 days and put them in your backpack within 10 minutes. After 10 minutes, candidates who have not organized their backpacks will be deemed to have automatically given up this exam." I repeat it again. After getting 5 useful information, Tang Fan, who had been thinking for 10 days and the last 30 minutes, immediately began the process of tinkering with things from the space buckle to the backpack. From beginning to end, it took no more than 1 minute. In the remaining 9 minutes, Tang Fan actively assisted Brad and Zhao Fan, and completed the organization of 3 backpacks by himself, hiding his merits and fame. With that speed and efficiency, even Dongwei, who always had a problem with Tang Fan, had to admit that when he applied for the Blue Ocean Mecha Academy, he was far from doing as well as others. So, Dongwei reluctantly gave Tang Fan an excellent in the registration column. This excellent can add 10 points to Tang Fan's total score. Don't underestimate these 10 points. 10 points more in the total score can completely raise your ranking from 8,627th place, last place, by 1/10, or even more. And this excellence, there are no more than 30 in the whole field, and the hole for their door is only given to Tang Fan and George. Tang Fan and George have taken a big step without anyone knowing. 10 minutes passed in a flash. As the prompt sounded again, everyone on the playground was surprised to find that their space equipment, including the space buckle for the mecha, was out of control and could no longer be opened. Those who took it out and placed it on the ground still had a little chance, but those who relied entirely on the space buckle were stunned. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 35 Examination. There were only 3 short reminder sounds. After 3 light sounds, Dong Yao's cold voice sounded again in the wailing. "Please stop your actions, examiners, please check in time. The examination room is in the northeast of the playground. 29.35 north latitude and 106.33 east longitude. 10 minutes later, the first exam will begin. Please go to the corresponding examination room to take the exam. Late candidates will be deemed to have automatically given up this exam. I repeat it again. This life-threatening voice, a unique positioning method, is unique and has no semicolon. Tang Fan didn't need to think at all. He grabbed Brad with one hand and Zhao Fan with the other, stepped on the flying board, and flew towards the northeast. The lightning speed and the roar of the flying board due to overloading attracted a 100% return rate for Tang Fan. In just over an hour, the 13,563 candidates present remembered this unique and androgynous candidate. Tang Fan, who is in the limelight, was not aware of it at all. He was busy determining the direction and looking for his own examination room. In fact, the Blue Sea Mecha Academy did not cheat the candidates too much in finding the examination room. There were a total of 9,000 examination cabins, 100 in a group, neatly placed in the 8th teaching building. As long as the Alliance Primary School geography test passed and could distinguish the longitude and latitude coordinates of the planet, they could find their own examination cabin. However, the examination cabin was easy to find, but the test questions were not so easy to answer. Although the Blue Sea Mecha Academy had 8 departments, namely the Mecha Casting Department, Mecha Driving Department, Starship Casting Department, Starship Driving Department, Command Department, Logistics Department, Pharmacy Department, and Art Department, there were only 5 sets of examination papers. 1 set for the Mecha category, 1 set for the Starship category, 1 set for the Logistics Department, 1 set for the Pharmacy Department, and 1 set for the Art Department. Each set of examination papers had a total of 100 questions, including 30 multiple-choice questions, 30 true or false questions, and 30 short answer questions, and 10 essay questions. The examination time was 60 minutes. As for the most miserable Command Department, 5 sets of examination papers were combined into one, and the total score was divided by 5, but the examination time was only 3 hours, which made people shed tears of sympathy. Although Tang Fan, Brad, Zhao Fan, and even George and Qin Yu all entered the gate one after another, the numbers they received were not connected. Of course, even if the numbers were connected and they got the same set of questions, it would be impossible to play tricks when encountering the examination cabin that isolates mental power. Qin Yu smiled and waved to George, which made George very angry, while Brad looked at Tang Fan with tears in his eyes, making Tang Fan laugh and cry. Childhood sweethearts are all debts. When you meet Brad, it's basically donkey rolling, interest on interest. Tang Fan patted Brad's shoulder and said earnestly, "Didn't I compile all the key points and difficulties into a book and send it to you? As long as you review well, there will be no problem. If you can't pass this exam, then look at the review points for the whole year and come back next year. I will wait for you here." As soon as Tang Fan finished speaking, a sneer came from the side. "The first round of exams hasn't even started yet, and you're talking big here. Aren't you afraid of being slapped in the face later?" Tang Fan grabbed the furious Brad and turned his head to look at the guy who spoke in a weird way. "Isn't that blonde and blue-eyed guy from the Brown family of Black Bear Star? His name is Johnson Brown?" "Yes. That's the name. It seems that Mr. Brown has no confidence in me. For some people, they fail the exam 4 times in a row, but others pass it in 1 try. It is definitely not their fault, but the fault of others and the fault of the exam anyway. No matter how many mistakes there are, it is not his own fault." Brad's anger disappeared completely because of Tang Fan's sarcasm. He held Tang Fan's shoulder and said with a smile, "I have little education, tell me quickly, is this the legendary envy, jealousy and hatred?" Tang Fan mercilessly slapped Brad's hand down and said coldly, "This is not the legendary envy, jealousy and hatred, this is jealousy and jealousy. It is a kind of psychological disease. If you have similar emotions, please seek medical treatment as soon as possible to avoid worsening of the condition." Brad clenched his fist in indignation. "I have known since I was a child that there is always a mountain higher than the other, so I will not suffer from this kind of mental illness. But some people, I think they are seriously ill. I don't know if they can be saved." Facing Brad's bright eyes, which were no longer hints, but indirect accusations, Johnson Brown's face was already dark and a little blue, and his fists were already clenched with water. At the critical moment when the battle was about to break out, the cold voice of Instructor Dong Yao rang again. "Attention all candidates present. The exam cabin will open in 3 seconds and close in 3 minutes. Please enter the exam cabin in time to take the exam. Candidates who do not enter the exam cabin will be deemed to have automatically given up this exam. I repeat again, 3 minutes, not long, not short either. Johnson Brown has been tripping people up for years and has made many enemies. He has taken 4 consecutive exams and is not far from the threshold of 20 years old. This exam is his last chance. Compared with the exam, the verbal dispute with Tang Fan and Brad is nothing. Seeing that the exam was about to start, Johnson Brown could only suppress his dissatisfaction, glared at them fiercely, and rushed towards his own exam room and his own exam cabin. But before he entered the door of the exam room, he was stopped by a strong man with brown hair and gray eyes. The two fought for dozens of moves, and when they saw that time was running out, they separated. At that time, Tang Fan and his group of 5 had already laid in their respective exam cabins, waiting for the exam to start. There were a total of 100 questions, which was only average in number, but the knowledge involved was quite broad and the difficulty was not ordinary. Moreover, no matter it was a multiple choice question, a judgment question, a short answer question, or an essay question, once the answer was submitted, it could not be returned, let alone modified. Although the difficulty was the same, the psychological pressure on people was a little heavier. As a top student, Tang Fan answered the questions effortlessly. It took less than half the time to finish all the questions. Hand in the paper in advance, and walk out of the examination room. After a while, the cute little foodie Qin Yi also came out bouncing. Zhao Fan and Brad walked over with their arms around each other as the bell rang for the end of the exam. Only the man in black, George, was nowhere to be seen. After asking Qin Yi, I learned that the man in black, who could shock many people with his coldness, was named George Blake, and he actually applied for the command department, which had a 3-hour written test. Chapter 36, Using Anything at Once. Tang Fan believed in the creed that time is money. 3 hours was enough for Tang Fan to cook a pot of braised beef. He cruelly ignored Qin Yi's expectant eyes, sat on the ground, calmly turned on the light brain, picked up the set of Alliance Star Beast star plants that was thick enough to kill the Star Beast, and started to review it again. She was obsessed with studying and couldn't extricate herself, making people reluctant to disturb her. The cute little foodie Qin Yi sighed, took out a small piece of memory metal from her backpack, rubbed it into a small stool, and sat down. Then, she held her chin with both hands and stared at George Black's examination room, looking cute and adorable. But this quiet and beautiful picture only lasted for 10 minutes before it was broken by a noise. In addition to the command department, which was still taking the exam, the test results of the Mecha Casting Department, Mecha Driving Department, Starship Casting Department, Starship Driving Department, Logistics Department, Pharmacy Department, and Art Department were all posted on a big list. In the interstellar era, red paper has long become an antique in museums. It is impossible to write on it and post it. The so-called big list is just a symbolic choice of black words on a red background, projected on the giant screen beside the playground of the Blue Sea Mecha Academy. Because the test numbers are issued temporarily and will not be synchronized to the optical computer, more than 8,000 candidates spontaneously squeezed towards the playground. The playground was bustling all of a sudden, bustling, more lively than the food street on the food planet. Even Tang Fan, who was obsessed with studying, raised his head from his book, not to mention the foodie who couldn't sit still. Qin Yi saw Tang Fan raised his head and immediately came over, holding Tang Fan's arm and shaking it non-stop. Beautiful sister, you are so good at playing the flying board, take me to enjoy it too. Let's not go anywhere else, just go to the playground to check the list. Tang Fan glanced at Qin Yi, with a half-smile expression, as if he had seen through Qin Yi's restless heart. Qin Yi felt a little uncomfortable when Tang Fan looked at her. She laughed dryly twice, raised her hand to her forehead, and said seriously, I swear, just this once. Tang Fan pretended not to see her little hand making a cross behind her back, and nodded reluctantly. Just this once, never again. Qin Yi jumped up happily, looking at Brad and Zhao Fan with a proud face, as if writing on her face I am the only one who has this honor. You have no share. This line of words is almost written on her face. In fact, it is not a good job to look at the list. There is nothing wrong with Tang Fan playing as a forward and enjoying the success. But the expression of the little girl is really irritating. The two big and strong men were so angry at the expression of the little girl that one Buddha ascended to heaven and the other Buddha came out. But when Brad and Zhao Fan touched the braised beef in their backpacks, They turned their heads in unison and decided not to bother with a little girl. Who let this little girl be a pharmacist and also their food provider? Brad turned from angry to laughing, and waved his hand happily. Go early and come back early, although Qin Yi didn't quite understand what caused Brad's expression to change drastically. Tang Fan had already stepped on the flying board and was about to take off. She didn't care about that much. She made a face at Brad, jumped on the flying board, and followed Tang Fan to look at the list. The giant screen beside the playground was 170 meters long and 112 meters wide, covering the entire playground. But with so many people, not everyone could see clearly. The school's restriction on space equipment made the situation even worse. All mechas and aircraft could not be taken out, which made Tang Fan's flying board stand out. Standing on the flying board, looking down at the heads below, Kenya couldn't help but be proud. But this pride didn't last too long. Tang Fan took out the optical computer, aimed at the giant screen and pressed the scan button, and then stepped on the flying board and flew back. Fly back. Go back. All in all, it took no more than 2 minutes. Kenya's face turned green. This is not the most important thing. The key is that Tang Fan was carrying her, shouting as he flew, a scanned copy of the big list, 10 credit points each. If you are interested, please call the optical computer number. Kenya had never experienced such a scene before, and she felt that she was so embarrassed. But Tang Fan was completely unaware. In Tang Fan's eyes, since face cannot be exchanged for credit points, it is dispensable to let him live, and it doesn't matter whether he stays or not. Tang Fan roared, and the whole playground shook 3 times. However, the effect was amazing. Soon, Tang Fan's optical computer number received thousands of remittance messages. Tang Fan, who was genuine and honest, quickly replied to the text messages in the order of remittance. As for the news bought with these 10 credit points, whether it was good news or bad news, Tang Fan could not control it. Tang Fan, who was enjoying the happiness of earning credit points, did not know that the instructors were watching Tang Fan behind the monitors, doing everything he could to earn credit points, and using school resources to earn credit points. How upset they were. Of course, even if Tang Fan knew, he wouldn't care too much. This wave of no-cost business will only make money for a while. When Tang Fan spent 10 minutes replying to the message, there was no more business. Tang Fan didn't mind. He shared the information he scanned with Brad, Zhao Fan and Qin Yi, and then looked for his own name. When he saw that his name was ranked first in the mecha casting department, Tang Fan pursed his lips reservedly, then found the mecha driving department and swiped from the back to the front. When he saw that Brad's name was actually in the middle and back, Tang Fan nodded with satisfaction and patted Brad's shoulder. You performed well and deserve a reward? Brad's expression brightened up when he heard this. Are there any material rewards? I want to eat meat. Tang Fan's expression immediately solidified on his face, and he nodded heavily after a long while. I'll do it for you if I have a chance. Although Tang Fan added a have a chance in front of his promise, Brad was still particularly satisfied. Foodies, it's so easy to deal with. At the same time, Zhao Fan and Qin Yi simultaneously put their laptops in front of Tang Fan. Although the results and rankings on them were not as good as Tang Fan's, they were obviously much better than Brad's. The meaning is self-evident. A poor student like Brad can get a food reward, so what about them? Looking at the expectant faces of Zhao Fan and Qin Yi, Tang Fan couldn't say no. He rubbed his slightly swollen temples, suppressed the urge to strangle the 3 people, and reluctantly made a promise. When the space button can be opened, I will make tomato beef brisket for you. This simple sentence attracted cheers from the 3 people. This is completely happier than they passed the first round of written tests. The instructor behind the monitor was so excited that his veins bulged, and deep in his heart he silently had an urge to never lift the space equipment restriction order. Who made Tang's poison so powerful? Who made them not on the guest list? Chapter 37, Past Events. Zhao Fan and Qin Yi are not the kind of people who are greedy for cheap things. Since Tang Fan promised to take them to eat beef and tomato pot, the 2 of them would naturally return the favor. Qin Yi silently took out the potion she made and stuffed it into Tang Fan's hand with a blushing face. Beautiful sister, this is my food allowance. I'll be counting on you for this period of time. Tang Fan looked at the box of mental power recovery potion, and the corners of his mouth twitched. This thing is the only potion to save mental power exhaustion. No matter where you are, it can be exchanged for a large number of credit points. What's more, The potion in front of him has the anti-counterfeiting logo and number of the Food and Drug Administration. Although, for a pharmacist, it may not be so expensive. But the foodie cutie took a box at a time and said it was food allowance. How long will it take to eat? Is this, to rely on him? Brad stopped Ken Yu's hand and said with a smile, "Are you planning to snatch offhand from me?" "No way. Our offhand is priceless." Ken Yu pouted and muttered, "I just want to have a meal." "Is it that difficult?" Brad shrugged. "It's not difficult to have a meal, but it's impossible to snatch offhand from me. For the sake of this box of mental power recovery potion, I reluctantly agree that you and the ice-faced guy who lives with you will live together for a semester." Ken Yu shouted dissatisfiedly. "George is a little cold to strangers, but he is not an iceberg face. He is very good and gentle." Tang Fan narrowed his eyes. "Is the man in black called George?" In the same sentence, Brad's focus is always different from Tang Fan. Brad curled his lips. "That's gentle to you." Ken Yu wanted to run away after hearing this. Fortunately, the desire to survive prompted Brad to take a step back and said simply, "Let's not talk about anything else. A box of potions for a semester. Are you going to do it or not?" Ken Yu glanced at her locked space buckle, thought about the indispensable items in her backpack, touched her rumbling stomach, gritted her teeth, lowered her noble head, and nodded. Tang Fan silently put the box of potions into her backpack and looked at Brad deeply. Brad chuckled and took out a small bag of braised beef from his bag. He smiled and said, "Exams are the most brain-intensive. You must be hungry. Take this to fill your stomach. After the operation test, Brother Zhao and I will go to the nearby area to find something edible and let Afan cook it for us to have a feast." This smooth and magical operation made the surrounding onlookers dumbfounded and had a new understanding of Brad's bottom line. The instructors behind the monitors were almost shocked. How could such a shady business be done by such an honest kid? A box of mental power recovery potions contains 12 in total, and any one of them is enough for an adult with a normal appetite to eat at any 5-star hotel on any gourmet planet for a month. A semester on Blue Ocean Planet is only 5 months at most, and to feed 2 half-grown children, this guy shamelessly accepted a box of mental power recovery potions. This business is too profitable. The honest face with a little shrewdness awakened a past that one of the instructors was reluctant to recall. Facing the monitor, he gritted his teeth and said, "The boss of the hammer repair shop." As soon as these words came out, the monitoring room was quiet for half a minute. And then bursts of gloating laughter broke out. It's not that everyone doesn't love their colleagues, but the trip to the Wild Star Field by Comrade by Fan, the instructor of the Turning Hole, was too classic, and has become a negative teaching material that the Blue Ocean Mecha Academy has to mention. The instructor was a beautiful woman with black hair and black eyes. Amidst the laughter, she reluctantly stood up, patted Comrade by Fan on the shoulder, and comforted him. "Think positively, without that little boss, you would never have come back that time." By Fan's mouth moved, opening and closing, like a dehydrated fish. In the end, he could only clench his fists and turn all his words into a sigh. The time in the Savage Galaxy was his most embarrassing one. It was originally just a simple exploration mission, and he didn't prepare much at all, but he didn't expect to encounter a beast tide, let alone a level 7-star beast. Relying only on that standard mecha, he seriously injured the level 7-star beast, but he himself didn't get better. He and his mecha were injured from head to toe. Relying on his powerful control, he barely landed on the red iron star. Looking at the only box of nutrients and a completely damaged mecha left by his side, the first problem he considered was the problem of survival. Just when he was struggling hard around the polar cap, he met Brad by chance. The boy with a shabby sign and an honest face said the first thing he said when he saw him and the mecha beside him, "Mecha repair, charged on demand?" Hearing that mecha repair was charged on demand for the first time, he was curious and took over the conversation. "How much does it cost to drive my mecha to Dido Star?" The boy who looked honest raised a finger silently. Then, he paid his only remaining box of nutrients and drove away the somewhat strange mecha. In the end, he did arrive at Dido Star safely, but his mecha was completely paralyzed as soon as it landed and could never be saved. Afterwards, he not only became a famous negative example of the Blue Sea Mecha Academy, but also worked for the Blue Sea Mecha Academy for a year in vain. Whenever he thought of it, he couldn't help but shed a bitter tear for himself. But as teacher Wendy said, if he hadn't met Brad and hadn't done the so-called repairs that Brad said, it would be uncertain whether By Fan would still exist in this world. But, it's hard to let go. While By Fan was struggling, Everyone had spread this great news to the optical computer of instructor Go Xiaogu. Go Xiaogu glanced at his optical computer and then looked at the giant screen not far away. Brad Smith, total score of 83.5 points, 693rd place in the mecha driving seat. Looking at the simple name at the top of the casting department, Tang Fan, an idea flashed through his mind, and then he quickly clicked on the optical computer. The next second, all faculty and staff of the Blue Sea Mecha Academy received a message from the cold-faced instructor Go Xiaogu, the flower of Gaoling, the first place in the written test of the mecha casting department, Tang Fan, the written test score of 110 points, the total score of 120 points, 5-star attention. By Fan, on the other hand, received another text message from Go Xiaogu, Brad Smith, total score of 83.5 points, 693rd place in the mecha driving seat. Tang Fan, written test score of 110 points, total score of 120 points, the top of the casting department. He also thoughtfully attached a photo of Tang Fan dragging 2 human-shaped luggage, Brad and Zhao Fan, and rushing through the blue gate first. Go Xiaogu did not express any personal opinions, but he perfectly expressed everything he wanted to say in one message. Chapter 38, Anger. Although Go Xiaogu did not give too much evaluation of Tang Fan to Bai Fan, his attitude of giving Tang Fan 5 stars has already explained a lot. Tang Fan's actions have a taste of everything is about money. In Go Xiaogu's eyes, this is a character problem. In addition, his surname is Tang, and there is a word vanadium in his name, which represents metal, which makes Go Xiaogu's impression even worse. Because, a man with the same surname Tang and another metal in his name, with a light word, thoroughly hurt a little princess in his palm, cousin Zhao Jingshu. Go Xiaogu admitted that he was angry. But when he thought of his cousin's appearance in these years, Go Xiaogu's expression could not help but become a little colder. Those with the surname Tang are all dangerous elements. One is irresponsible, leaving a sentence just find a good man and marry him, and disappears for no reason. The other takes advantage of others' dangers, sees money, and uses the resources in his hands to cheat and deceive, and does everything possible. He deserved it. Besides, 5-star attention is not a death sentence. A person with a clear conscience fears no slander. Gold will always shine. He, Go Xiaogu, will not feel guilty. Just like that, without Tang Fan's knowledge, he was inexplicably labeled as a dangerous element and was targeted by the school as a 5-star attention figure. It is not easy to do something under the watchful eyes of the public. The difficulty coefficient directly rises to 5 stars. After doing all this, Dongao instructor Go Xiaogu hid his merits and fame and raised his special loudspeaker. The next second, his cold voice resounded through the sky. In 10 minutes, the second exam will begin in the 10th teaching building. Please gather the top 800 candidates in the written exam at 29 degrees 31 N, 106 degrees 35 E in the northeast of the playground. According to the test scores, 100 candidates will go to the corresponding examination room to take the test. Late candidates will be deemed to have automatically given up this exam. I repeat it again. To add an explanation, the top 3 candidates in the exam can get a bonus of 10 points to their total score. I repeat it again. The top 3 candidates in the exam can get a bonus of 10 points to their total score. The playground was in an uproar. A thin boy with extremely agile movements rushed to instructor Dong Yao in a few steps. Instructor, is this supplementary explanation only for this exam? Faced with this sharp question, Dong Yao responded mercifully, from the time you set foot on Blue Star until the end of the assessment, each instructor has the right to add points for your assessment of different projects. As soon as these words came out, the whole playground was boiling again. Instructor Dong Yao was not afraid at all and spoke calmly. The right to interpret this exam belongs to the Blue Sea Mecha Academy. If you have any objections, please sign a confidentiality agreement and evacuate Blue Sea Star in an orderly manner. I repeat it again. In 8 minutes and 5 seconds, the second exam will begin in the 10th teaching building. Please ask the top 800 candidates in the written exam scores of each department together at 29 degrees 31 feet north latitude and 106 degrees 35 feet east longitude in the northeast of the playground. According to the test scores, 100 candidates will go to the corresponding examination room to take the exam. Late candidates will be deemed to have automatically given up this exam. Before they could react, 2 minutes were lost. This bad news made everyone scream. There were also those candidates who did not pass the first round of written exams. Based on the principle of I can't get it, I won't let you have it easy, They made a lot of trouble. In an instant, the playground became a mess. Of course, this had nothing to do with Tang Fan and others who were standing at the edge of the playground, away from the dispute. When Go Xiaogu notified them for the first time, Tang Fan had already grabbed his sponsor Qin Yi, stepped on the flying board, and rushed to the examination room. Tang Fan and Qin Yi's examination room basically spanned the entire teaching building. Fortunately, Tang Fan was on a flying board, and his flying board skills were extraordinary. When Go Xiaogu notified them for the second time, Tang Fan had already sent Qin Yi away and stood at the door of the examination room before Brad and Zhao Fan, who were running all the way. Seeing Brad and Zhao Fan standing still, Tang Fan nodded with satisfaction. Not having to go back to pick them up would save a lot of time. In this way, he would have more time to observe the surrounding environment, make favorable plans, and obtain more resources. For example, now he is trying to roughly estimate the direction of the next exam through the materials and parts piled up in the examination room. This kind of thing is not only Tang Fan doing, but many people behind him are also doing it. However, it is not an easy task to avoid the many traps set by the examiner and find the best answer. From the corner he peeked at the entrance of the examination room, Tang Fan discovered at least 10 parts that looked the same but were actually very different. They were suitable for different standard mechas. The remaining area was more than 10 times the area he saw, and he didn't know what kind of traps were waiting for everyone. Instead of relying on the tip of the iceberg he could see and guessing all the time, it would be better to save energy and wait for the examination room to open and take action after a thorough look. Tang Fan massaged his temples, relaxed his mind, and counted down the time silently. Before Tang Fan counted down to 1, the door of the examination room slowly opened and closed. A robot stood at the door, with red light flashing in its eyes, scanning their number plates up and down. When the prompt sounded above the 10th teaching building, the red light in the robot's eyes dimmed immediately, and all the robots held hands to form a wall, blocking all the candidates who had not yet arrived at the examination room outside. The voice of the instructor Go Xiaogu came slowly. All 8 candidates will be disqualified from the exam. A mean male voice came from the side. The robot did not record the candidates who passed the exam. Even if you force your way in and complete the exam task, you will not get a score. Although this voice was very annoying, the candidates present, especially the experienced ones who took the exam repeatedly, seemed to be controlled and were extremely obedient. The latecomers left obediently, and the candidates who arrived on time stood in a straight line obediently. It can be seen that everyone was in awe of the owner of this voice. Many rookies who came for the first time had secretly looked at the owner of the voice, and even whispered about it. The recooked meat who came back and forth several times were all silent and said nothing. Tang Fan, who knew that curiosity killed the cat, consciously lowered his eyebrows and eyes, followed everyone's pace, and hid himself deeper and deeper. Tang Fan didn't know that he had been stared at by someone. Seeing Tang Fan's young wife-like appearance, Zhao Junji, codenamed Yao Gao, nudged Go Xiaogu with his elbow. "Cousin, that girl looks honest and decent. She doesn't look like someone who deserves 5 stars. Are you tempted by something?" This sentence not only denied Go Xiaogu's judgment, but also slandered Go Xiaogu's personality. If this girl wasn't his relative, Go Xiaogu would definitely challenge him to the death. Go Xiaogu took a deep breath, endured it again and again, and finally couldn't help but kicked Zhao Junji directly into the examination room where Tang Fan was. Hearing is false, seeing is believing. Whether Tang Fan is worthy of 5 stars, see for yourself. Chapter 39 Operation. Zhao Junji did a somersault in mid-air and landed steadily in front of his classmates from the mecha casting department. He wiped his hair casually and smiled charmingly at everyone. Everyone present couldn't help but lower their heads. After all, the scene was so hot that they couldn't complain, so they had to cover it up. When everyone finally calmed down, Zhao Junji was about to speak when his light brain suddenly started beeping. Who is so blind at this time? Zhao Junji was so angry that he was bubbling up. But when he raised his wrist and saw the 3 words Go Xiaogu behind the sender, no matter how angry he was, Zhao Junji could only stay in his bed. There was no way. This was his own cousin. He couldn't beat him, and he couldn't scold him. Zhao Junji rubbed his nose, resigned himself to turning on the light brain, and looked at the simple sentence on it. His mind was buzzing. Jingshu, remember to keep it a secret. Remember to keep it a secret. Keep it a secret. His cousin always treated his sister Zhao Jingshu as a treasure and treated him as a weed. What could he know that Zhao Jingshu didn't know? Zhao Junji pondered for a moment, then suddenly raised his head, glanced at Tang Fan, and then looked at Go Xiaogu. His face, which had always been carefree, suddenly became serious. He stared at Tang Fan closely and said in a serious tone, "Candidates of the Mecha Casting Department, it's time to display your talents. Use the various materials and mecha parts provided in the examination room to assemble a mecha. This is the best and only chance that a Blue Sea Mecha Academy gives you to save yourself and your teammates. Please cherish it. Parts are limited, first come first served." Tang Fan felt the gaze of Zhao Junji falling on him, like a needle piercing his back. Although Zhao Junji didn't mention it, Tang Fan knew in his heart that there was only one chance and no mistakes could be allowed. He squinted his eyes and quickly swept across the operating system, cockpit, maintenance cabin, and energy supply system. Countless combinations flashed through her mind, and she summarized more than 10 alternative plans. But no matter which plan, it was based on the perfect combination of these 4 internal components. After all, in the whole month before, he had been in contact with various parts of the fuselage the most. He was confident that in a limited time, he could combine and even create some parts with the limited materials at hand to complete the fuselage design he wanted. But in the 4 aspects of the operating system, cockpit, maintenance cabin, and energy supply system, he was not sure at all. The mecha with only the fuselage was just a bright and beautiful shelf that could only be placed in the exhibition hall. Only a mecha that was in motion could play a minimum role in the next round of exams, instead of dragging its feet. Tang Fan's brain was running at high speed, but other parts of his body were not idle either. When Zhao Junji pressed the button of the examination room door, the 7 examination doors of the casting department made a heavy sound of opening. Tang Fan had already stepped on the flying board and rushed to the examination room first. R8 series operating system, Q85-3 energy supply system, matching E585 energy slot, 4 energy stones in hand. T-series cockpits and maintenance bays are sold out. It doesn't matter, there are still Z-series. Although the grade is low, it's okay as long as it can be used. Although the fuselage has only 13 parts, including helmet, armor, left shoulder guard, right shoulder guard, left arm armor, right arm armor, left hand armor, right hand armor, waist guard, left leg armor, right leg armor, left combat boot, and right combat boot, there are thousands of parts. There are 183 key parts, and Tang Fan quickly scanned them from near to far. Then came various precious and high-quality metals. Finally, there were less important spare parts. As for the standard parts required by all mechas, Tang Fan would not be too picky as long as they were intact. With the eyes of an excellent assembly master, it is not too easy to find the parts that suit you among a group of children who are at a loss or in a hurry. Before others have chosen the parts, Tang Fan has already assembled them quickly. Left combat boot, right combat boot, left leg, right leg, waist guard. Tang Fan had already completed 1/3 of the fuselage, but most of the candidates were still looking for parts, and even fought for parts. Tang Fan looked around vigilantly, then put on the armor and welded it directly. He stuffed all the internal parts in at once, and Tang Fan quickly completed the assembly and connection of the left arm armor, right arm armor, left hand armor, and right hand armor. When most people found the parts, Tang Fan's helmet had been installed. The fuselage was complete, with beautiful lines, but not many people's eyes lingered on it. There was only one reason: the quality of this mecha was too low. Mechas were divided into white level, waste parts assembly machine, yellow level, standard mecha, purple level, modified mecha, black level, super mecha, and red level, god level mecha. There were not many parts in the examination room, and it was basically impossible to make purple, black, and red level mechas. There are a lot of customizable mecha parts, and there is a great opportunity to make a yellow level mecha. Who would care about a white level mecha? What's more, there is the top 3 candidates in the exam can get a reward of 10 points for the total score. Such a carrot is hanging in front of the candidates. Everyone wants to take a bite. Who is willing to settle for second best? Occasionally, a few people looked at Tang Fan, and their eyes were mostly full of sympathy. In their eyes, those who choose to assemble a white level mecha must be weak and have no choice, admitting failure in disguise. Tang Fan didn't care about everyone's misunderstanding, and even welcomed it. Seeing that everyone was immersed in their own mecha assembly work, Tang Fan silently breathed a sigh of relief, got into the fuselage, and assembled the 4 major parts in an orderly manner. The Z-Series cockpit and maintenance cabin are simplified versions of the cockpit and maintenance cabin, and there is no technical difficulty in assembling them. The difficulty is the R8 series operating system and the Q85 for 3 energy supply system. Although there is a book sponsored by Mr. Zhao Jiang, it is still the first time for Tang Fan to actually operate it. Fortunately, his eyesight was not blurry and his hands were not shaking. Although he debugged it several times, he finally completed it. After installing the matching E585 energy slot and placing 2 energy stones, this white-level assembly machine, which can only be regarded as level 2, slowly moved according to Tang Fan's instructions. A set of 128 basic physical techniques was slowly played out by a mecha, and it became more and more smooth. At the same time, Tang Fan and the mecha cooperated more and more tacitly. After the last debugging, a little special metal repair and reinforcement, Tang Fan's mecha has reached his expected goal. Until then, Tang Fan drove his mecha and slowly walked towards the robot examiner. After the 3D stereoscopic scanning test, Tang Fan obtained the permission of the robot examiner, operated his mecha, and slowly walked out of the examination room. Chapter 45 Star Attention. Looking around, Tang Fan found that he was the first to leave the examination room. At that moment, Tang Fan knew that he should be able to get the extra 10 points. There are 2 levels of yellow level mechas, and each level has 9 different series, totaling 108 models of mechas. There are 83 types of parts that are not very different in these 108 models of mechas. Although these 83 types of mechas were scattered in various corners of the examination room, Tang Fan could still tell at a glance that some of them were real. It was the lack of this part that determined that the possibility of candidates wanting to collect the parts provided by the school to assemble a yellow-level mecha was almost zero. Even if someone was gifted and used most of the parts of the yellow-level mecha, combined with some white-level mecha parts or self-cast parts, and finally assembled the mecha, the possibility of the grade falling was as high as 88%. If according to Tang Fan's guess, this exam was a matter of both time and quality, he would be able to secure the first place. Even if this exam was purely about quality, Tang Fan believed that with a peak quality of level 2 and his unparalleled speed, he would definitely be in the top 3. Seeing that it was still early, Tang Fan happily lay in the cockpit, turned on the optical computer, and continued to read the Alliance Star Beast Star Plant Encyclopedia, which was thick enough to kill the star beasts. Reviewing the past will help you learn new things, and being honest will help you respect etiquette. Learning more is always a good thing. Looking at the unique mecha on the playground, recalling the girl who would be the first in the casting department in this exam, but whose eyebrows could not be seen clearly. Zhao Junji finally knew that the reason why Tang Fan was awarded 5 stars by Go Xiaogu was not only because of Go Xiaogu's slight prejudice against the surname Tang, but also because his observation, reasoning, and judgment were all above his peers. It seems that Go Xiaogu will always be Go Xiaogu. Even if he is emotional, his reason is always online. Zhao Junji clicked on the optical computer, and soon, Go Xiaogu's optical computer lit up. Go Xiaogu glanced at his optical computer, which clearly read, "I heard that the genius of the Expeditionary Army was injured and had a full 6-month vacation?" Go Xiaogu pondered for a moment and understood what Zhao Junji was thinking. Although that person specialized in mecha driving, every mecha driving expert is half a mecha foundry master. For the rookies who just entered school, it was enough. Go Xiaogu clicked a few times on the optical computer, and a reply came to Zhao Junji. "I will be responsible for Laosong, and you will be responsible for Jingshu." Although there is nothing wrong with the allocation of one person to one person, Laosong is probably the only person Go Xiaogu can hire, but it is well known how much his sister Zhao Jingshu loves the Blue Sea Mecha Academy and how much she loves her job. He was asked to persuade Zhao Jingshu, who had not taken a vacation for more than 10 years, to leave school for a vacation, and take a vacation for 6 months. Zhao Junji felt that he was not feeling well. But Go Xiaogu gave him an affirmative sentence, and the meaning was very clear. No rebuttal was accepted. Zhao Junji looked at Go Xiaogu with grievance, and silently typed 2 words, "Received." Go Xiaogu ignored Zhao Junji's resentful eyes, and looked at the various examination rooms with burning eyes, actively reporting and communicating with everyone in the monitoring room. 10 minutes later, a cute little girl jumped out of the examination room of the Department of Pharmacy. Looking at the billowing smoke behind her, Go Xiaogu couldn't help frowning and issued a request to share the surveillance video of examination room 1038 to the monitoring room. The request was quickly approved, and a video of about 50 minutes was sent over. Go Xiaogu played it quickly at twice the speed. The video perfectly shows how a seemingly innocent little girl perfectly uses her petite figure and speed advantages to take advantage of various medicinal materials. Pinch a little ginseng beard, break a little Ganoderma lucidum, and smooth 2 safflowers. The little girl did it particularly smoothly. Everyone was still fighting for medicinal materials endlessly, and this cute little girl had already made a level 5 paralysis potion. In addition, an unstable semi-finished product was accidentally left behind. The little girl just found the robot examiner with a paralysis potion, passed the test and walked out of the examination room. There was a candidate who wanted to take advantage of the situation and accidentally touched the unstable semi-finished product left by someone. There was a bang, and the workbench within a radius of 1 meter was charred, and the unlucky candidate was ragged and unrecognizable. Of course, Kenya would never admit that she was wrong. After all, as long as the hand is steady enough and a sufficient amount of adjuvant is added to the semi-finished product, a paralysis potion will be perfectly generated. The candidate who wanted to take advantage of the situation just lacked a little bit of stability. Of course, 88% of pharmacists lack that a little bit of stability. Go Xiaogu glanced at the little girl who was eating the braised beef, and thought about what she had done, and felt a chill behind him. He silently marked the little girl named Qin Yu with a 5-star attention, moved his feet, and moved a little further away from this human killer. The little girl noticed something, raised her head from the braised beef, and smiled at Go Xiaogu. Instructor, do you like my braised beef? But I only have this one. If I have more next time, I will give it to you, okay? Go Xiaogu took out his nutrient solution and shook it. Thank you. I have enough nutrient solution. How desperate was he to snatch food from a dangerous pharmacist? He was not stupid. Kinyu looked at Go Xiaogu doubtfully, and ran away with his snacks. Ran away. The instructors in the monitoring room were stunned when they saw this scene. They always thought that the person who could make Go Xiaogu lose face in this world was probably not born yet. Who would have thought that such a master would just appear out of thin air? And it was such a petite and cute girl. Seeing Go Xiaogu's face livid but unable to vent, everyone felt a sense of relief that you have calm to this day too. All the instructors in the monitoring room laughed so hard that they fell backwards, while groping for the confirmation button on the 5-star attention option. For those who can cause trouble in the examination room and make Go Xiaogu suffer, a 5-star rating is not excessive. Because of the excellence of these two girls, other candidates have become particularly mediocre. This also makes the 5-star attention candidates for this assessment the least in the assessment of the Blue Sea Mecha Academy. In an hour and a half, most of the candidates walked out of the examination room one after another. As for the candidates who have not walked out after the 90 minutes, not only did they fail to pass the test, but they were also locked up in the examination room alive, and they would not be released until the cleaning of the examination room was completed. Hearing this news, everyone turned their eyes to the innocent girl Qin Yi, and expressed their deepest sympathy to the candidates in the examination room number 1038 who failed to pass the test. Why should they be in the same class with such people? It is really too difficult. Chapter 41, Money Blindness. Kenya didn't care about everyone's meaningful looks. She only cared about one thing. The written test of the command department was over. Where did George go? Qin Yi, who is always heartless, would still pay attention to the owner who fed her all year round. Seeing more and more people coming, Qin Yi's little face wrinkled into a ball. She thought about it, took out a pneumatic hammer used to fix tents from her backpack, and knocked it lightly on the mecha that had been standing aside for a long time. The mecha suddenly glowed red, and the warning sound of being attacked resounded through the sky, successfully awakening Tang Fan, who was addicted to studying. Through the electronic eye, Tang Fan saw the culprit who attacked his mecha at a glance. The corners of her mouth could not help but twitch, and she opened the hatch to look at Qin Yi. What's wrong? Qin Yi silently put the air hammer into her backpack, pointed at the mecha and said loudly to Tang Fan, 10 credit points, lift me up. Tang Fan raised his eyebrows. Energy stones are very expensive. Qin Yi rolled her eyes. 50 credit points. Tang Fan nodded, and the joy in his voice could not be hidden. Deal. With a sound of credit points arriving, the cold mecha started to move, and it slowly lifted up the weak girl and lifted her above her head. This scene not only stunned the onlookers at the scene, but also perfectly shocked the instructors behind the monitors. No one has ever shown making the best use of things and being greedy for money so vividly. Today, they have learned a lot. Qin Yi's magical operation perfectly attracted George Black, and also attracted Brad and Zhao Fan. After all, except Tang Fan, no one would use a mecha to do such a thing. Brad was a bit careless. He found Tang Fan's trail and pulled Zhao Fan towards the target. When Brad pulled Zhao Fan in front of the mecha, George also rushed over. Tang Fan put Qin Yi down slowly in center in front of George. The next second, George's light brain vibrated. A girl walked out of the examination room for only 1 second. Before the door of the examination room was completely closed, a short video of a violent explosion in the examination room suddenly appeared in front of George. George raised his head and looked at Qin Yi with burning eyes. Qin Yi touched her nose guiltily and laughed dryly. I'm not worried about you and want to get out early. I accidentally forgot to collect a semi-finished product without adding seasoning. I didn't mean it. George knew Qin Yi for a long time, and he didn't believe a word she said. However, this kind of thing can be settled later, in public. George whispered in Qin Yi's ear, we'll settle this account slowly after the exam. Qin Yi's face fell all of a sudden. She turned on the light brain with a complaint, called up Tang Fan's light brain number, and sent a message in a huff. I'll double the reward George gives you. Soon, Tang Fan's reply came, no matter how many times you double it, he will double it again based on the evidence. Qin Yi stared at the message in amazement and slowly raised her head. What greeted her was George's half-smiley eyes and his slightly raised light brain. Qin Yi had only one thought in her heart, it's over. Before Qin Yi could come up with a countermeasure, Go Xiaogu's clear voice rang again. Please note that the test results have been sent to your optical computers. Candidates who have passed the test, please go to 30.02N. 106.15E to collect the equipment. The final assessment will begin in 10 minutes. Late candidates will be deemed to have automatically given up this exam. I repeat, listening to the content of the broadcast, everyone's eyes on the playground were focused on the mecha driven by Tang Fan. For many years, the Blue Sea Mecha Academy has announced the results through the giant screen, but because of the magical operation of this amazing woman, it has finally changed. Even Qin Yi, who looked resentful, had a very complicated expression. George couldn't help rubbing Qin Yi's face, and uttered a word from his thin lips, ugly. Women, no matter how old they are, can't tolerate one thing the most: someone says they are ugly. Before George finished speaking, Qin Yi didn't care about Tang Fan anymore, and hugged George and started scratching. George firmly controlled Qin Yi and shouted to the mecha, flying board, 100 at a time. Soon, the hatch of the mecha opened again, and the flying board was thrown down by Tang Fan and stopped steadily in front of George. Tang Fan did not even look at the flying board, and shouted directly to Brad and Zhao Fan, why are you standing there? Squeeze into the maintenance cabin. Brad and Zhao Fan came to their senses, took 2 steps at a time, hugged each other, and squeezed into the maintenance cabin. The flying board and the mecha moved together, heading towards 30.02N, 106.15E. Whether it is mecha casting or to mecha driving, including potion making, the most important point is stability. Even if Brad and Zhao Fan's weight caused the center of gravity of the mecha to shift, Tang Fan still operated the mecha steadily and quickly reached the target point. As a man with both physical strength and mental strength, George was also very stable. As soon as Tang Fan arrived, he also arrived with Qin Yi. In fact, if Qin Yi hadn't struggled desperately and tried to tickle him, he might have been faster. After all, it takes time to start up a mecha, but the flying board doesn't. However, this does not affect the overall situation. Anyway, they are still the leaders of the team, the first group of people to get the equipment. But when Tang Fan saw the equipment in his hand, there were 10,000 beasts running in his heart. He finally suppressed the urge to curse, and heard Brad ask the question he wanted to ask the most. Is this thing the equipment? Instructor number 15, who was distributing the equipment, nodded happily. The 9th generation of simulated electronic equipment eliminated from the armament has a realism of up to 90%, and can restore various injury conditions to the greatest extent. It is the best choice for exercise activities. These words made the candidates who were waiting to receive the equipment roll their eyes. One of the candidates said sincerely, Instructor, if you don't go to the shopping channel to be a host, it will definitely be a loss for the Alliance Information Department. Instructor Yao Wu's expression changed, and he gave back one word, get lost. After finally calming down, Instructor Yao Wu couldn't help but sneer, don't think that you can treat the exam as a game just because you are wearing realistic electronic equipment. The final assessment is an elimination system. Only the last 300 people can get the purple star badge of the Blue Sea Mecha Academy and become a member of the Blue Sea Mecha Academy. After receiving the equipment, hurry to the front. Each person will also have a scoreboard and a distress signal flare. Each person eliminated will score 10 points. There is no upper limit on the points, and you can use the points to exchange for materials at school. Everyone has a chance to sound a distress signal flare. Please cherish it. Instructor Yeo Wu emphasized the last sentence. Tang Fan, who has always been knowledgeable and interesting, narrowed his eyes and couldn't help frowning. Only when the difficulty has reached the level of risking one's life will the instructor regard even asking for help as an opportunity. It seems that this final assessment is more difficult than imagined. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 42 Robbers. Those who can make it to the last exam are all very capable. Many people have also thought of what Tang Fan could think of. Among them is George. He glanced at Tang Fan's mecha and silently returned the flying board to Tang Fan. Compared with a mecha without energy, a flying board that can be driven by a small amount of light energy is obviously much more useful. Tang Fan understood what George meant and obediently took the flying board and hung it around his waist. However, he did not give up the mecha. The mecha is a deterrent and can avoid a lot of trouble. When he assembled the mecha, he had already considered the energy problem and chose the most energy-efficient defensive mecha. What's more, he also prepared 4 energy stones. Even if the mecha's energy is not enough, it can be used as the last line of defense to give them more life. Tang Fan took the lead in receiving the scoreboard and distress flares, and said to Brad and Zhao Fan, change clothes and check the equipment. Tang Fan's voice was not loud, but very powerful. This successfully brought Brad and Zhao Fan back to their thoughts, allowing them to follow Tang Fan's instructions and act quickly. It takes a skill to create the most favorable conditions under the most unfavorable conditions. And Tang Fan is undoubtedly the one who adapts to the environment the fastest and uses this skill. Afan, there is no problem with my equipment, mine is also normal. Tang Fan patted the non-existent dust on his body and nodded to George, want to come together? Before George opened his mouth, Kenya had already spoken, okay. You pay for 3 meals. Tang Fan glanced at Brad and Zhao Fan, and nodded reluctantly. Who asked him to bring 2 burdens with him? Let's take a small loss. Kenya laughed and clicked the light computer twice. Tang Fan looked at the simplified map on his light computer, which was similar to the graffiti of a 3-year-old child. He was a little dazed. But he immediately came back to his senses, glanced at Qin Yi, and drew a circle in the area where pure white transitioned to dark yellow. Kenya nodded, and shook her head. He clicked his light computer, and drew a smaller circle in the area where milky white transitioned to bright yellow. Tang Fan narrowed his eyes, smiled and nodded. She sent a coordinate to Brad's computer, patted Brad's shoulder with a smile, raised her chin and gestured to Zhao Fan. The meaning was obvious, asking them to drive the mecha first. After arriving at the place, the first priority is to observe the environment, and the second thing is to collect food. I will send the star plants and star beasts that need to be collected, and the key points that need to be avoided to your computer later. Brad saluted Tang Fan in a strange way, I promise to complete the task. Kenya looked at Tang Fan in surprise. Do you still want to keep this big guy? Tang Fan nodded with a smile. A defensive mecha can still be used as a warehouse to store supplies even if it has no energy. Besides, I chose the Q85 for 3 energy supply system and the matching E585 energy tank. Kenya didn't know much about mechas, and looked at George without knowing the truth. George, the top of the written test of the command department, did not answer him, but coughed non-stop. He accidentally choked. He didn't know Tang Fan's bottom line thoroughly enough. This guy had premeditatedly chosen the Q85 for 3 energy supply system and the matching E585 energy slot from the beginning, which had average performance but a high degree of compatibility with various existing energy stones of up to 80%. It was obvious that he was going to cause trouble. However, who would bring something like energy stones when they can't open the mecha? Even if there is a Q85 for 3 energy supply system and a matching E585 energy slot, it's useless. Good plan, maybe the source stone is hard to find. Tang Fan looked at the playground that was quickly cleared and the hundreds of mechas standing there, and smiled. Isn't this ready-made? George looked at the crowded mechas on the playground, and then looked at Tang Fan's shriveled backpack, and he felt sick. What do you want to do? Tang Fan took out a set of micro-tools from his shriveled backpack and put them in George's hand. He patted his shoulder and said with a smile, "Brother, it's time to show your ability. As a student in the command department, you should be able to do such a simple job as disassembling energy stones." George swallowed his saliva and gave Tang Fan a thumbs up. Knowing that the energy in the energy stones given by the school might be less than 10% and would not last long, he still chose a defensive fuselage and a Q-85-3 energy supply system and a matching E-585 energy tank to make the best use of them. Knowing that most people, including himself, would think that the metro was a burden, he chose to stay and set off last, just to get this bunch of energy stones for fast-forward charging points. What kind of spirit is this? This is a spirit of not taking advantage of the opportunity. Just when George was stunned, Tang Fan had already taken action. Tang Fan quickly disassembled the energy stones one by one and threw them into his shriveled backpack. Before the exam, his backpack was still bulging. George was stunned for a moment, and then he realized that he had probably moved the things in his backpack to the mecha. No wonder he asked Brad and Zhao Fan to drive the mecha away, and he stayed with the flying board. This woman is so cruel. He patted Qin Yi on the shoulder and said earnestly, "The Q-85-3 energy supply system and the matching E-585 energy slot match the existing energy stones of various models up to 80%. This woman is so shameless that she makes full use of everything. I'm going to get the energy stone. In the future, you should stay away from him. We can't outsmart him." Qin Yi was horrified. It was the first time she heard George admit defeat, and she was really a little uncomfortable. However, it was also about getting energy stones. George was like a monkey climbing up and down, while the beautiful lady's posture was so graceful that it would not be an exaggeration to describe it as flowing like clouds and water. The beautiful sister is beautiful, has good cooking skills, and can make George admit defeat. So, should I change a partner? Qin Yi began to hesitate. Before she made the final decision, Tang Fan had already dismantled the energy stones of 200 or 300 mechas. He patted his bulging backpack with satisfaction and began to dismantle some of the mechas. Qin Yi was stunned. What kind of operation is this? When the 4 mechas that Tang Fan had pulled were dismantled into pieces, a new metro was re-erected, and Tang Fan's backpack collapsed again. Qin Yi was shocked. The instructors guarding the monitoring room were also shocked by Tang Fan's way of collecting supplies like scraping the ground. Is it too much to underestimate this amazing woman to give her 5-star attention? Blue Sea Mecha Academy is afraid that it has encountered robbers. Should they watch the school's assets disappear? What a headache. Tang Fan, who was regarded as a robber, did not realize what kind of shock her magic operation brought to everyone. She was like a mouse that fell into a rice jar, and continued to toss the energy stones non-stop, enjoying it. Chapter 43 Destination. After all the energy stones were in hand and several commonly used mecha parts were properly stockpiled, Tang Fan smiled and threw George and Qin Yi into the mecha maintenance cabin, and drove the mecha to chase Brad and Zhao Fan. The instructors looked at the mess left by Tang Fan and the back of him leaving in a chic manner, and for the first time they had the idea of modifying the examination system of the Blue Sea Mecha Academy. With the power of one person, he influenced the examination system of the Blue Sea Mecha Academy. Tang Fan was destined to leave a strong and colorful mark in the history of the Blue Sea Mecha Academy. However, before that, he had to accept this assessment that was easy for him but extremely unfair to others. The speed of the mecha is naturally much faster than that of human legs. In just 1 hour, Tang Fan had arrived at his destination, a small area of light yellow in a large area of bright yellow. Brad's sense of direction has always been good. The location of the metro was exactly the same as the coordinates Tang Fan said, which made Tang Fan very satisfied when he saw the mecha at a glance. What made Tang Fan even more satisfied was that Brad discovered the mecha he was driving at the first time, and issued an early warning. Tang Fan tapped a few times on the optical computer, and the agreed signal for the meeting soon reached Brad's optical computer. The mecha that had stopped below withdrew its attack preparations, and waited for Tang Fan and his companions to arrive. Seeing Tang Fan getting off the mecha, Brad was not surprised at all, as if this was a normal and good daily operation. There was only a trace of shame on that honest and simple face. "Afan, I just set up the cordon, and I just read the information you sent me," Tang Fan waved his hand indifferently. It doesn't matter. No matter what time, your own safety is always the first priority. Brad breathed a sigh of relief, and his usual silly smile returned to his face. But, Afan, I'm hungry. Tang Fan looked around and said lightly, do you want to eat some fruit? As soon as the words came out, a duet of a man and a woman sounded in Tang Fan's ears. Eat, for foodies, there is nothing that cannot be eaten except for the loss, not to mention the rare original ecological fruits in the interstellar era. Tang Fan threw his backpack in a box to Brad, put the energy and the energy stone together. I will prepare fruits for you. Brad and Qin Yi nodded happily, but George and Zhao Fan heard something different from Tang Fan's words. Zhao Fan glanced at Brad, who was busy, and thought to himself, this girl is strong and healthy, and he is a brother who grew up with Tang Fan, there shouldn't be any problem. George frowned and glanced at Qin Yi, thinking to himself, this girl is a pharmacist, she should be able to tell whether it is poisonous or not, there probably won't be any problem. George and Zhao Fan glanced at Tang Fan not far away, exchanged glances silently, and moved away from the two foodies. Brad had just finished mixing an energy stone, and Tang Fan had already returned with a pocket full of fruits. There are only two kinds of fruits, both of which are yellow in color and oval in shape. However, one of them is slightly larger, smooth and bright, the other is small and delicate, and not good looking. Seeing two foodies coming around, Tang Fan kindly introduced them. This big one is called egg yolk fruit, and the small one is called yellow marble. They are both edible fruits. The first time Qin Yi saw the egg yolk fruit, she thought to herself, the name is nice, the appearance is good, it must be delicious. She couldn't wait to pick it up, took a bite with full of expectations, and she felt sick. It was not as delicious, sweet, juicy, and tender as she imagined. Instead, it was astringent with a slight bitterness, and dry enough to choke her throat. Yes, that's the feeling. It doesn't feel like fruit at all, but like dried fruit. After finally finishing eating, Tang Fan kindly asked, is it delicious? Qin Yi quickly stretched her eyebrows and squeezed out a bright smile, nodded and said, yes, it's delicious. Tang Fan stuffed two more into Qin Yi's hands. If it tastes good, eat more, fruit is a good thing, what can I do? Qin Yi made a bitter face and ate it all. Her tongue was so bitter that she just wanted to drink water to relieve it. For the rest of her life, Qin Yi will never eat egg yolk fruit again. Seeing Qin Yi holding on to the drinking water after eating the egg yolk fruit, Brad silently moved his hand away from the egg yolk fruit and chose the small yellow marble. Following Tang Fan's instructions, he peeled the fruit and put it into his mouth. Brad shivered from the sourness. It was not just sour, it made his teeth itch. Can this thing be eaten? Seeing Brad's eyes and nose wrinkled together, Qin Yi was finally comforted. The thing you ate is also called yellow peel fruit. It has a high medicinal value. The roots, leaves, fruits and seeds can all be used as medicine. It has the effects of digestion, stomach, spleen, heat and pain relief. When Brad heard that it was medicine, he couldn't help but tremble, and he felt unwell. Qin Yi added with a smile, this thing is mild in nature, tastes sour, slightly bitter, and spicy, but it is non-toxic. It's okay to eat more, and you can eat it when you have a cough or a cold. Tang Fan picked up one, peeled it and put it in his mouth, patting Brad on the shoulder. Even if you don't have knowledge, you must have common sense. If you don't have common sense, read more books. The information I gave you, whether it is egg yolk fruit or yellow marbles, has detailed information. There are three types of yellow peel: sweet yellow peel, sour yellow peel and bitter yellow peel. It is rich in water, protein, fat, crude fiber, carbohydrates, vitamins and minerals. Sweet yellow peel is more popular with most people, while sour yellow peel is used to make juice, jam, etc. because of its strong sour taste, and bitter yellow peel is mostly used for food therapy. Egg yolk fruit is also a good thing, rich in protein, fat, and carbohydrates. It has the effects of helping digestion, resolving phlegm, nourishing the kidneys, refreshing the mind, promoting blood circulation and strengthening the body, calming and relieving pain, reducing pressure and lowering blood lipids, and beautifying. Tang Fan shook his head in grief, picked up a box, put the yellow marbles in his pocket into it, and handed it to Qin Yi. Help me make jam. I'll ask them to catch a cuckoo chicken, and we'll use the sour and sweet yellow fruit jam to dip the boiled chicken in the evening. Qin Yi looked at Tang Fan with a smile. This is not difficult. But are you sure you want to eat what the pharmacist made? Tang Fan thought about it and silently took his hand back. Then I'll do it. Kenya heard this and immediately chuckled, with a proud momentum of turning the tables. George patted Kenya's head and scolded with a smile, you, but looking at his doting eyes, there was no intention of condemning Kenya. There is no such thing as innocence, it's just that someone is holding you up behind the scenes. Tang Fan looked at the two people who loved each other, and thought about his unreliable father, and felt a little lost in his heart. Other girls are protected by others. How come everything is reversed when it comes to her? Does the greater the ability, the greater the responsibility? Tang Fan glanced at the four people in front of him and silently made up his mind, if he doesn't have a good life, they won't have a good life either. The name of Tang Bapai was not given for nothing. Chapter 44. It's too difficult. The first step to survival in the wild is to have fire. Tang Fan's light words immediately got everyone moving. In the wild, fire means warmth, hot water and cooked food, which can multiply people's strength and build confidence that is crucial to survival. If you have a fire stick, lighter or matches, it is not difficult to make a fire. But if you don't have these, you must master the skills of making fire with your bare hands. The methods of artificial friction fire making include drilling wood to make fire, fire plow, fire saw and fire bow. Among them, the fire plow method is relatively simple and easy to implement. This is a common method of making fire in the Pacific region. One end of a hardwood stick is used to continuously and quickly rub in the groove on the wooden base until the accumulated heat ignites the wood chips in the groove, and then the burning wood chips are placed in the fire starter piled at the front of the groove, and carefully blown until the flames are ignited, and then fine firewood, coarse firewood and whole pieces of tree segments are added in turn, and finally a pile of blazing fire can be obtained. But this is not an easy task. First, there must be enough firewood. Second, there must be perseverance and timely blowing and oxygen supply. Everyone worked for a long time before the invisible sparks spread. Tang Fan collected the fire slowly and leisurely, and then asked the second question leisurely. Have you found water? Everyone's face was stern, and their expressions suddenly became serious. In order to find firewood, they almost walked through the area within a radius of 1 mile. Not to mention water, there was not even the sound of water. In other words, there is no water source in this entire area. This is not a good thing. Brad frowned, his teeth were sour, and he said, I'll go find yellow fruit. In the absence of water, the fruits and rhizomes of plants rich in water are priceless treasures. Although yellow fruit is sour, it is rich in water. It's better to have sour teeth than to starve to death. Kenya thought about the taste of the yellow peel fruit and swallowed silently. I have some clean pharmaceutical instruments here, which can be used to make a simple dew collector and filter. Collecting rainwater and dew is another way to get drinking water. The two people quickly took action, leaving Zhao Fan and George looking at each other. George touched his chin and said lightly, next, should you talk about the problem of sleep, humans do not have thick fur like animals, so in the wild, they must find a suitable space for temporary hibernation. Facing George's question, Tang Fan shook his head firmly. We have 2 mechas and 4 cabins. 1 person on duty and 4 people resting are enough. I am worried about another problem: food. There are many species here, with a large number of edible plants and animals, but these will not automatically come to us. In addition, the salt in my hand is only enough for the 5 of us for 3 days. Lack of salt will cause various discomforts in the human body, so in general, Tang Fan will prepare enough edible salt. But when he set out from Sangzi Star, he did not expect that there would be 2 more people. George knew what was meant by the song, and quickly handed over 5 days' worth of salt to him and Qin Yi. 5 days should be enough. In addition, the first half of the night is yours, and the second half is mine. As for food, George strode forward and patted Qin Yi on the shoulder. Do you have any potions with a flavor of roasted pork belly? Give me one. Potions with a flavor of roasted pork belly? This is really the first time I've heard of it. Looking at Tang Fan's puzzled eyes, Kenya explained, while searching for the potion, when I was in middle school, there was a wilderness survival training. I didn't have anything I wanted, and I was starving. After I went back, I made potions with different flavors. They don't have any effect, just to satisfy my cravings. George took the potion from Qin Yi's hand and continued, there are a total of 10 flavors, and the roasted pork belly flavor is the strongest. It should be able to attract a group of star beasts and star plants. As expected of his teammates, this operation is not worse than his own. Then let's go first. Calling Brad, who had picked a lot of yellow peel fruits, the 5 of them quickly dug a trap. George smiled sinisterly, opened the potion, and threw it into the trap. A strong smell of roasted pork belly immediately spread out, which was almost exactly the same as the smell of Jin's barbecue in the 5-star hotel in the capital. Brad, a foodie, couldn't help but sniff and exclaimed, "It smells so good." Tang Fan couldn't help but roll his eyes and looked up at the sky in silence. Since Brad, a foodie, couldn't stand it, let alone those low-level star beasts and star plants with low IQ. After a while, waves of star beasts and star plants jumped into the trap one after another, and they couldn't be stopped. When those star beasts and star plants couldn't find the food they longed for, but unexpectedly found their own kind that was contaminated with food, it was like seeing the enemy who killed their father, and they were extremely jealous. For a while, there were countless star beasts and star plants jumping into the trap and killing each other. Soon, there were a lot of dead star beasts and star plants on the ground. As long as they were properly preserved, it would not be a big problem to eat them for a day or until the end of the exam. When the smell of the potion gradually disappeared, the wave of suicide gradually subsided. Tang Fan looked at the pit full of prey and squinted his eyes. He finally understood how his unreliable father had created a wave of beasts. Food, especially delicious food, has a lethality to star beasts and star plants that far exceeds everyone's imagination. I still underestimated the lethality of pharmacists. Kenya opened his mouth and murmured, "I just found out that my lethality is so great." Not far away, an instructor disguised as a star plant recorded the scene with tears in his eyes, and silently gave Kenya and George 10 points each. Are all the candidates this year devils? Just now, he was almost trampled into meat paste by the rushing star beasts. As an instructor, it was really hard for him. Unexpectedly, the more difficult things were still to come. This group of people who had trapped the star beasts and star plants did not even let go of the corpses. They took all the star beasts and star plants out of the trap, threw the inedible ones back directly, and classified all the edible ones and processed them together. The cure girl from the pharmacy department was in charge of the star plants, and the others each had a knife and focused on dealing with the star beasts. For a moment, the faint smell of barbecue, mixed with a strong smell of mutton, and the lingering smell of blood mixed into an indescribable smell, rushing straight to the instructor's forehead, and he almost couldn't help vomiting. What surprised the instructor was that the girl whose eyebrows could not be seen clearly was the one who played the knife the best and dealt with the star beasts the cleanest. He saw him cut off the head, hooves and fur of the star beasts, which were too troublesome to deal with, and she threw them into the trap beside him. The knife slid downwards, and the internal organs were removed with the tip of the knife. The star beast immediately became food and was hung on a branch nearby, waiting to be roasted. The boys had not even finished processing one star beast, but the girl had already processed 3 or 4 star beasts. This was so quick and decisive that if it happened to a human, the instructor could not help but shudder. Chapter 45, even more difficult. After the star beasts were almost processed, Tang Fan washed off the bloodstains on his hands and knife, and sat down by the fire to deal with the pile of ingredients. Without water, stewing and boiling have become unrealistic. There's only one way to cook all the star beasts in front of him, roasting. But roasting star beasts is not an easy task. Logically, fruit sawdust should be used, marinated first, then cold smoked, and finally roasted. Unfortunately, no matter in terms of time or materials, everything is not convenient, so everything can only be kept simple. But even so, Tang Fan did not slack off. First, make jam with yellow peel fruit, and then use jam and some star plants to marinate the star beasts. Next, it is a half-hour massage. After the star beasts are fully flavored, Tang Fan slowly moves the star beasts for low-temperature cold smoking. The parts of the star plants that cannot be used are selectively added to the firewood by Tang Fan, providing the unique fragrance of the plants. During the cold smoking process, Tang Fan continued to marinate the next batch. When the second batch of star beasts was almost pickled, Tang Fan changed the positions of the 2 batches of star beast meat one by one and sat by the fire to roast the meat. With a crackling sound of firewood and the sound of grease dripping, the smell of charcoal fire and the fragrance of plants gradually blended perfectly with the smell of meat. The air was filled with this tempting smell, which made people feel warm for no reason. Especially the cloud antelope in Tang Fan's hand, it was the best. The mutton was mixed with a seasoning made of yellow fruit jam and star plants, and formed a golden shell under high-temperature baking. Countless grease oozed and dripped from its body, making a sizzling sound, exuding a special fragrance mixed with fruit fragrance, plant fragrance and animal fat. The fragrance was like a small hook, which made people drool. Brad, Tang Fan, George and Qin Yi stopped their actions at the same time, looked at each other, and quickly pushed the star beasts and star plants around them into the trap and covered them all with floating soil. Then, the four of them looked at each other, pretending nothing had happened, washed their hands and knives, and squeezed a Tang Fan's side. Even if you can't eat it, it's good to look at it. And the instructor, who saw and smelled it, but was destined not to eat it, had to resist the urge to swallow his saliva. After all, swallowing saliva will make a sound, which will affect the completion of his assessment task. The instructor silently recited the Blue Sea Mecha Academy faculty and staff rules. He was really too difficult. Especially when Tang Fan gave an order and everyone started to grab it. With the tearing sound of the lamb leg from the lamb, smelling the increasingly rich smell of the split lamb, looking at the full gravy at the crack, imagining the delicious taste of the lamb, the instructor felt sick. A sheep has only 4 legs. Among them, the 2 hind legs far exceed the 2 front legs in terms of weight and quality. This truth is well known. However, it is not that you can eat it just by knowing it. If you want to eat the lamb leg, you still have to rely on your strength. Tang Fan and George grabbed the hind legs based on their strength, while Brad and Tang Fan, who had realized the cunning of Tang Fan and George and were very aware of their own strength, grabbed the front legs. Only Miss Qin Yi's hands were empty, and she didn't grab a single leg. The little girl's mouth was flat, and she was about to cry. The next second, the lamb hind leg in George's hand was handed to her, and in George's other hand, there was a large piece of lamb chops that had just been torn off. The lamb chops were slightly bent, with a golden shell, shiny oil beads and a little gravy, making it look particularly tempting. The little girl looked at the lamb legs and then at the lamb chops, and didn't know how to choose for a while. George looked at the little girl and couldn't help but sigh deeply. There are only 4 lamb legs, but there are still a lot of lamb chops. If you stay still, there will be nothing. The little girl gritted her teeth, stomped her feet, and took the lamb leg neatly, and took a bite of the lamb chop in George's left hand. With a crack, the fat and gravy secreted from the mutton mixed with the yellow fruit jam and the crispy shell formed by the star plant, and broke into Qin Yi's mouth. The crisp feeling, accompanied by the sweet and sour taste of the yellow fruit, the fragrance of the star plant, and the meaty aroma of the mutton rushed into the mouth. The next second, the fat taste of the mutton followed, and a sense of satisfaction slowly rose from the heart. George looked at Qin Yi's grate and couldn't help shaking his head, but still ate the lamb chops left by Qin Yi. He took a big bite, and his mouth was full of the deliciousness of the mutton, which made George narrow his eyes in satisfaction. Unlike the barbecue of Jin's barbecue in the 5-star hotel, Tang Fan did not completely abandon the smell of mutton, but let the smell blend with other flavors, so that you can't have the slightest dislike, and just want to eat it one bite after another. Every bite is more satisfying than the last one, and every bite is more delicious than the last one. At that moment, George suddenly wanted to know the taste of the lamb leg in Qin Yi's hand. Action is worse than thought. George really did it. The gravy of the lamb leg is more abundant than the lamb chops. The gravy mixed with yellow peel fruit jam and the fragrant star plant splashed in the mouth and spread quickly. The wonderful taste of the cloud antelope is far better than the top steak. There is no greasy feeling, only endless tender taste. Because of this bite of lamb leg, it seems that it is not so difficult to accept being kicked by Qin Yi. The 5 people quickly immersed themselves in the food, but they did not notice that not far away, the instructor disguised as Xingzi was already in tears. The staff rules of the Blue Sea Mecha Academy could no longer stop him. He seemed to leave this sad place, but he was reluctant to leave this damn aroma. It's too hard. What about the rookie abuse? Why does it feel like he's the one being abused? If he can choose, he will never be an examiner of the ultimate assessment again in his life. Of course, if he is given a cloud antelope like this, he can still consider it. No, just a lamb leg, or a lamb chop. It was a long time later, probably when Tang Fan and his friends had finished grilling all the food and left in their mechas. The instructor picked up a cold lamb leg, probably caused by that prodigal son Tang Fan, and found that there were still some leftovers near the bones that had not been completely eaten. The instructor couldn't help but try it. But he found that the lamb leg tendons were firm, and the aroma was obvious when chewed, with a sense of strength and fragrance. He unknowingly gnawed the lamb leg until there was no meat left, and it was as smooth as a drumstick, and he stopped with a sense of unfulfilled desire. From then on, he became a man who could be moved by lamb leg tendons. Of course, this is all later. Chapter 46 Transformation. After eating a roasted cloud antelope, the four of them held their stomachs and groaned. Tang Fan looked at the four people who couldn't move, and his expression became a little ugly. If they hadn't taken advantage of the map and the mecha and occupied a more advantageous terrain, these people would have died hundreds of times just by lying on the ground after eating and drinking. However, she didn't have time to blame a few people. She was busy. It's not an easy task to take care of the 5 people. Nutrients are all credit points, so save them if you can. There are so many star beasts and star plants in the camp, and they are all food. As long as they are handled properly, it will be enough for the 5 of them to eat until the end of the exam. The 4 people looked at Tang Fan busying around, and they couldn't help feeling guilty. Kenya consciously took her own pharmaceutical equipment and continued to make dew collectors and filters. This doesn't require walking, just using your brain and hands. It's not difficult at all. The rich George took out a small piece of digestive tablet from his backpack and threw it into his mouth. 3 minutes later, he quickly recovered his fighting power, and left with a sentence, "I'm going to find yellow fruit." Brad and Zhao Fan, the 2 brothers in distress, were left holding their stomachs and groaning. That look was really eye-catching. Tang Fan couldn't help but turn around and turned his back to them. Out of sight, out of mind. Soon, Brad and Zhao Fan couldn't groan anymore. As time passed, when the orange sun gradually set, the temperature dropped rapidly. There is a constant temperature system inside the Blue Sea Mecha Academy. They didn't experience the legendary high temperature of 87, but after leaving the Academy teaching building, the lowest temperature of -32 throughout the day was about to hit them. Legend has it that before the beginning of the interstellar era, the poor basically relied on shivering to keep warm. Everyone has never experienced it personally. But when the temperature of Blue Star dropped to the lowest temperature that ordinary protective clothing could withstand, -15 degrees Celsius, the skin temperature began to drop. In order to restore the body temperature, the body will try to make the muscles and organs tremble to generate heat, that is, shivering. This shivering consumes energy. Brad and Zhao Fan no longer hold their stomachs, but quickly gather around the fire next to Tang Fan to keep warm. Chu Kin Yi, a little girl whose physique is not as good as everyone else, couldn't help sneezing. She came to Tang Fan and complained in a low voice, "The weather on Blue Star is really pitiful. I obviously added a warm vest, but I still sneeze because of the cold." Hearing Kin Yi's complaint, Brad and Zhao Fan's eyes lit up, and they quickly ran to the mecha to look through their backpacks. After finally putting on the warm clothes, they felt alive. As childhood sweethearts, Brad did not forget Tang Fan. He quickly hugged Tang Fan's warm clothes and returned to the fire. "Afan, it's getting cold, you should also put on your warm clothes." Tang Fan dealt with the last star beast, washed his hands, took the warm clothes slowly, and threw them on Kin Yi. "It's not enough to just be graceful without warmth. The warm clothes are for you, and you can take off the vest and give it to me. Don't be too touched." 3,000 credit points, no bargaining. Kin Yi said angrily while changing her warm clothes. "You will get beaten if you are so greedy." "Believe it or not," Tang Fan glanced at Kin Yi and said indifferently, "You can't beat me, Kin Yi. Okay. You have warm clothes, you have a big fist, and whatever you say is right." Kin Yi, who was indignant, angrily threw the warm vest to Tang Fan, transferred 3,000 credit points to his account, set up the dew collector, and climbed up to the mecha maintenance cabin angrily and went to sleep. The firewood was crackling. Tang Fan slowly put on his warm vest and dealt with the remaining star beasts and star plants. Brad and Zhao Fan saw that things were not going well and hurried over to help. After the 3 of them dealt with the last batch of star beasts, George, who said he was going to pick yellow-skinned fruits, came back slowly with a handful of yellow-skinned fruits in the milky white moonlight. "You were gone for so long, and you only picked so little." Brad's tone was a little disgusted. George didn't care, stuffed the yellow fruit into Tang Fan's hand, and said lightly, "1/3 of the rookies were not well prepared and could not resist the severe cold, so they directly sounded the distress signal flare. Another 1/3 of the rookies were eliminated because of their weakened combat effectiveness. You guys are very good." Tang Fan rolled his eyes silently. "When you say they are rookies, don't forget that you are also a rookie. Don't tell me that you have been there for so long just to test how well we are prepared." George touched his chin and did not take over the conversation, but suddenly asked, since you can win the first place in the 2 rounds of examinations in the foundry department, making a few drones should not be difficult for you. Tang Fan narrowed his eyes, and some thoughts flashed through his mind, but he couldn't catch them. Before Tang Fan could speak, Brad had already yelled, UAVs are such low-level things, anyone in the foundry department can assemble them. Who are you looking down on? This sentence interrupted Tang Fan's train of thought. Looking at George's eyes waiting for an answer, Tang Fan still nodded reluctantly. George nodded in satisfaction, saying I'll take over at 12 o'clock, and then quickly entered the mecha and fell asleep. Brad wanted to rush up to explain, but was grabbed by Tang Fan. We have no water source, which is very disadvantageous. If we want to get points, we can't stay here all the time. Starting tomorrow, we must move towards the water source and participate in this hunting activity. This is not an easy task. Tonight, I will be on duty for the first half of the night, and George will be on duty for the second half of the night. You two should rest quickly. Tomorrow, it's your turn. Brad and Zhao Fan looked at each other and nodded silently. That night, everyone slept extremely soundly. After all, they were so fierce that the star beasts and star plants within a radius of 1 kilometer were all gone. As for people, without a mecha, they couldn't run fast, and most of them were still groping at the edge of the inner circle. When I woke up, breakfast was still barbecue. No matter how delicious the food is, you will feel sick of it if you eat too much. Even if you change from roasted cloud antelope to roasted long-eared rabbit, roasted wild boar. But no one can stand it if you eat the same thing every day. Eating barbecue every day will make you get angry. Getting angry is terrible, and those who have experienced it know it. But there is something more terrible than getting angry in the world, that is, the chef getting angry. As a person who is very stingy, since the instructor said that points are good things and can be exchanged for materials at school, Tang Fan has only points in his eyes. After all, if you don't take advantage of a bargain, you are a bastard. Tang Fan, who has sufficient food and energy stones, happily decided to change his strategy from defense to offense. Looking for water while looking for points, both hands must be grasped, and both hands must be strong. Chapter 47 Points. As a team preparing to hunt, most of them will throw out bait. Unfortunately, there is no one in the 5-member team who is suitable for the role of bait. 2 weak women in the team, one relies on the inside story of the cooking set exam, scans the rankings to do a no-cost business, one hand after another of the magic operation, has become a Wonder Woman known to all the candidates of the Blue Sea Mecha Academy. The other one showed a wave of magic operations during the second round of operation exams, directly sent herself to the hot search, and became the object of everyone's prevention. George, dressed in black, just by his cold face, has the strength to get rid of the role of bait. The big and strong men Brad and Zhao Fan, just by their body shape, can intimidate others. Showing weakness to the enemy, it's impossible. Since this road is blocked, we can only find another way. The first step is food temptation. The temptation of food is not something that everyone can resist. What's more, it is the roasted cloud antelope that some instructors can't resist. This move, combined with the foodie little cutie Qin Yi, is extremely lethal. There is no way, Miss Qin Yi eats very deliciously. Just watching her eat, you can eat 2 more bowls of rice. Even though they know that this little girl is not as innocent as she seems, many people still step into this trap and add bricks and tiles to their scoreboard. Of course, there are many victims, including star beasts and star plants. It's a pity that Miss Qin Yi's appetite is not big enough. This trap can be used 2 or 3 times a day, but it is unlikely to be used more than that. The coverage of the barbecue flavor after cooling is far less than that of freshly baked, and the impact surface is not enough. George looked at the points on his scoreboard and curled his mouth downward. The next second, he slowly stood up and stretched out his sinful hand to Qin Yi. Barbecue flavor potion. Qin Yi frowned. Do you still want to eat barbecue? The piles of star beasts and star plants left such a deep impression on Qin Yi that when George mentioned the barbecue flavor potion, she immediately imagined that George wanted to eat meat. As a successful commander, George would not do the same thing over and over again because of food problems. He thought more. No. I heard that in the final assessment of the Blue Sea Mecha Academy, as long as the plan is used properly, the heads of those who sounded the distress signal flare for some reason will also be counted as the heads of the plan implementers. We are all the same age. Facing so many star beasts and star plants, our performance is too ordinary. I want to see what kind of on-the-spot reaction other children will have when the beast tide comes. After this, everyone looked at George differently. The instructor who hid in the big tree and disguised himself as a flying star beast almost couldn't keep his body steady and fell out of the nest. The children nowadays are really amazing, much more than when they took the entrance exam. What is the number? 8057? Give a 5-star attention. Oh, have you given it? Not only this guy has a 5-star attention, but 4023 and 6850 around him were also 5-star attention. Wow, there are 3 5-star attentions in this class, and this team has taken them all. What kind of shit luck did he have? Soon, the instructor who was lucky understood that the reason why the 5-star attention was 5-star attention was indeed extraordinary. Several mecha parts appeared in 4023's hands, and soon they turned into several small drones. 6850 contributed 6 boxes of different potions with the smell of food. 4023 controlled the drone, and under the command of 8057, it started from the pure white inner circle of the examination room, spraying potions with a faint smell of food all the way, and moved towards the outer circle of the examination room. The closer to the outer circle, the longer the drone stayed, and the stronger and more concentrated the smell of the potion. In the end, the potion appeared at a certain point in the outer circle of the bright yellow examination room, along with roasted cloud antelope, roasted long-eared rabbit, roasted wild boar. Driven by food, various star beasts and star plants went from being restless to being excited, and finally became manic and restless. They forgot their mission, the training of the breeders, the suppression of their grades, and everything else, and collectively migrated to the place where the smell of food was the strongest. No, they ran desperately. A man-made beast tide broke out without warning. The lucky instructor only had time to issue a warning on the internal system before the beast tide began. It came too fast, too suddenly, and too violently. After all, only a few people reacted in time and escaped. These lucky ones were either at the edge of the inner circle and were not affected much, such as Hoki, or they were strong and responsive, such as the poisonous scorpion. And more candidates did not even have time to react, and were led astray by the brutal collision of the star beast Xingzi, and were eventually harvested by the 5-man team that had been planning for a long time, such as Johnson Brown. There were also some people who finally understood the meaningful words of Instructor by Fan, and hurriedly sounded the distress signal flare, and were taken away by the instructors hiding in various places, barely saving their lives. There were also some people who were directly dug out from under the hoof of the star beast. Thanks to the advanced medical technology in the interstellar era, as long as the key parts are fine and the time to put them into the treatment chamber is timely, most of the time it is just a matter of how long the treatment takes and how much the treatment costs. In addition, there are some unlucky ones who are directly injured by the star beasts. After this battle, the number of candidates left is only more than 200, which is far below the lower limit of the enrollment of the Blue Ocean Mecha Academy. The final assessment of the Blue Ocean Mecha Academy, for the first time, was 2.5 days, breaking the record of the shortest assessment in history. Mr. George Black, who is ruthless and taciturn, harvested more than half of the heads. Most of them were heads of people who were forced to sound the distress signal flare, because of his one-shot victory. George became the top of the command department of the Blue Ocean Mecha Academy with the first place in the points list, the first place in the total score list, and the first place in the professional results. At the same time, he also became the most unpopular candidate among the candidates of the Blue Ocean Mecha Academy this year. The accomplice, oh no, one of the teammates. The medicine provider Qin Yi, and the technology and food provider Tang Fan, because they divided some heads according to the contribution ratio, tied for the second place in the overall score list, and the first place in the medicine department and the casting department. Zhao Fan beat Brad with a slight advantage of 13 heads and became the fourth place, becoming the top of the mecha driving department. Brad, on the other hand, could only be the fifth in the overall score list and the second in the mecha driving department. The 5-member group looked at their points with pride, and discussed their points with confidence, calculating the possibility of exchanging them for exchange materials. The next second, this group of excited children was hit by an accident and fell into a deep valley. Chapter 48 Missing. Feng Mian, the director of the school's financial department, came to them with a thick list. The list detailed the various losses caused to the school by the improper behavior of the 5 of them in causing the beast tide. In fact, it was not too much. Even if all the points of the 5 people were deducted, there was still a shortfall of more than 30,000 credit points. According to the Accident Responsibility Identification System, George was the main person responsible and was responsible for 60% of the fine, totaling 18,800 credit points. Kinyi and Tang Fan were secondary responsible persons and were responsible for 15% of the fine, totaling 4,700 credit points. Brad and Zhao Fan, as participants, were responsible for 5% of the fine, totaling 1,567 credit points. As local tyrants, George and Kinyi paid the fee with their credit cards without any hesitation. Zhao Fan gritted his teeth and paid off the debt in one go. Only Tang Fan and Brad were left staring at each other. They were both poor. Although Tang Fan had just made a deal without any capital and exchanged some credit points, it was simply a drop in the bucket for her and Brad. You know, there is no free lunch in the world. Blue Ocean Mecha Academy is not a charity, and everything costs money. With the little money Tang Fan had, after paying the tuition and accommodation fees, there was basically nothing left. This was also the main reason why Tang Fan was anxious to make money. What to do if you had no money? Finally, the kind-hearted girl Kinyi stood up with a smile. She raised her index finger to Tang Fan. 1 semester, a free cook for 1 semester, only 6,267, compared to a box of mental power recovery potion, it was too cheap. Tang Fan raised his eyebrows. You alone, the loss can't be too much. 1 person can eat for free for a semester, she can barely accept it. Kinyi glanced at Tang Fan angrily, holding George's sleeve and not letting go. The two of us, what is her relationship with George? If she doesn't bring him, this guy can cheat her to death. Having just witnessed George's ability to cheat people, Kinyi dare not take risks. Tang Fan looked at Kinyi in disbelief. For the first time in his life, he understood the meaning of stealing a chicken but losing the rice, and also deeply understood what it meant to not know a person well, take advantage of the fire and regret. But looking at Fang Mian's iron-faced and selfless face, thinking about the various scenes when he left the Red Iron Star, Tang Fan had to grit his teeth and nodded. Having achieved a staged victory, Kinyi cheered, rushed to Fang Mian, and happily settled the debt for Tang Fan and Brad. Seeing Tang Fan and Brad like defeated roosters, dejected and in pain, the candidates around laughed unkindly. There was a hint of you have come to this day in that laughter. Among them, the one who laughed the loudest was the blonde and blue-eyed guy named Johnson Brown. Yes, that guy also took advantage of Tang Fan and others to get on the last train to the Blue Sea Mecha Academy. Tang Fan and Brad's temporary defeat seemed to make them feel better. Even though, the people who won over Tang Fan and the others were another group of people who had cheated them. Tang Fan didn't care much about other people's opinions, but Johnson Brown still attracted his attention. For some reason, she just felt that he didn't match her aura. Fang Mian, the director of the finance department, could understand the students' hearts very well. He issued a certificate of settlement, but did not hand it out. Instead, he asked loudly, who should I give this certificate to? Kinyi and Tang Fan's eyes briefly met in the air, and Tang Fan quickly raised his hand. Give it to me. Fang Mian, who didn't see the joke, regretfully handed the certificate of settlement to Tang Fan. Tang Fan's regretful expression made his teeth itch. Fang Mian looked at this scene, pushed his glasses like decorations, and laughed. You two have a great relationship. Tang Fan and Kinyi looked at each other and sneered. Haha. Good relationship, there is no such thing. Fang Mian seemed not to feel the weird atmosphere between the two people. He smiled and held the information and walked quickly to the meeting room of the Blue Sea Mecha Academy. There was a whole table of people sitting in the conference room, including Dean Lan Yuan, Honorary Principal, Expeditionary Force Commander Song Xiuan, Level 9 God of War Chu Ming, the Chief Examiner of this exam, Command Department Director Gao Zhan, Mecha Driving Department Director, and Cold-Faced Instructor Gao Xiaogu. As soon as Fang Mian stepped into the conference room, all eyes were focused on him. Fortunately, I have fulfilled my mission. Just 4 words, successfully made everyone breathe a sigh of relief. What everyone cares about is not the successful arrival of more than 30,000 credit points, but the official reset of the points of the 5-person team. In the Blue Sea Mecha Academy, credit points are not important, but points are important. And the points in the hands of these 5 children are enough to make the Blue Sea Mecha Academy a mess. This is not allowed by the Blue Sea Mecha Academy. But these children seem to be making trouble, but they are standing within the standards of the examination rules and disciplines. It is really not an easy thing to deduct their points. If it is not done well, the credit and reputation of the Blue Sea Mecha Academy will be damaged. After so many years of school establishment, this is the first time they have met such a student who is so thoughtful, capable, and good at making trouble. In addition to the 5-star attention during the exam, they should also be given 5-star attention during the 7 years in school. Lan Yuan, the dean of the Blue Sea Mecha Academy, slightly restrained his joy and quickly got to the point. The crisis has been temporarily resolved. The next topic is how to improve the examination system for students, especially the final assessment system. Please speak up. Everyone looked at each other, and for a moment, there were so many things to think about that they didn't know where to start. The conference room suddenly fell into an awkward silence. Even quieter than the conference room was a corner of the playground. Tang Fan pulled Brad's arm with a light computer and read the content on it word by word, his face as cold as ice. As for Brad, who was holding the light computer, his eyes were already full of tears, as if he would cry in the next second. This was definitely Brad's most unfortunate day. He finished the exam happily and finally got a high score, but before he had time to be happy, it was cleared. That would have been fine, but he still owed the school 1,567 credit points, and needed his little King Mei to work in exchange for the debt. This already made him inferior to others. It would have been fine if his father didn't pay his debt, but he also threw such a big bomb on him. His life is really too difficult. Think about what his father said. Son, although you should still be taking the exam now, I still have to tell you. Since you left, the situation on Chitty Star has become more and more severe, and business has become more and more difficult. After discussing with your mother, we decided to move to Sangzi Star to seek refuge with Lao Bu. The day after your and Afan left, your mother and I, along with your 3 younger brothers, had already arrived at Sangzi Star. Your uncle Tangang was originally with us, but he suddenly disappeared not long after we arrived at Sangzi Star. Brad didn't know what was written at the end, because he didn't even read it, and his own King Mei masturbated the light brain. King Mei's aura is 2 meters and 8, and no one can hold back when she gets angry. Brad looked at the light brain that was so close yet so far away, and didn't dare to speak at all. Tang Fan would definitely be angry after knowing that Uncle Tangang was missing. If he didn't say anything, Tang Fan would only target Uncle Tang. If he said something, no one could guarantee whether Tang Fan would vent his anger on him. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 49, Are you convinced? Tang Fan stared at Brad's computer for a long time, and after confirming that she was not mistaken, she threw the computer to Brad and turned on her own computer fiercely. But when she dialed the computer number that she knew by heart, she only heard a mechanical female voice, repeating the same voice over and over again. The number you dialed is not in service. Please check before dialing. What else did Tang Fan not understand? Tang Gang had already planned to send himself and Brad to the Blue Sea Mecha Academy and Brad's family to Sangzi Star. What did he want to do? Tang Fan felt a chill on his back. He quickly opened the Alliance news and browsed it. When he saw the news that there was an explosion on Hematite Star, the port and Beta Street were completely paralyzed, and only 10 people were injured, Tang Fan was actually relieved. Hearing that no one died and knowing that the bastard was still alive, he was actually relieved. Tang Fan leaned against the wall, sat down slowly, hugged his knees with his hands, and buried his face in them. That bastard is still alive. Great. Brad finally finished reading the message his father sent, and silently moved to the side of Tang Fan. His lips moved for a while, and finally turned into a sigh. Uncle Tangang is so unreliable. Zhao Fan looked at Tang Fan and felt that something big had happened. He kicked Brad and whispered, "What's wrong?" Brad looked at Tang Fan and didn't say anything. This kind of thing, no matter how you say it, is wrong. Instead, Tang Fan quickly raised his head and replied, "It's nothing, it's just that my unreliable father blew up my house and disappeared." Zhao Fan looked at Brad in disbelief. Brad pondered for a moment and nodded. What Uncle Tangang did was almost the same as what Tang Fan said. That is, disorder and degree. Anyway, it's not a big deal, the thick-skinned Brad comforted himself. Zhao Fan was deceived by Tang Fan's words that were 7/10 true and 3/10 false. As for the truth, It's really not that important. At least it's not important now. The important thing is that the first high-level meeting of the Blue Ocean Mecha Academy this semester has finally ended. More than 200 candidates who passed the final assessment can finally register and become a member of the Blue Ocean Mecha Academy. 9 tables were lined up, with 8 department heads and Fang Mian each occupying one side. Go Xiaogu picked up his exclusive loudspeaker and shouted loudly, 218 students who passed the final assessment, report to the department heads of each department. The cold voice was repeated 3 times without any delay, and the playground immediately became lively. The eliminated candidates looked at the students who passed the assessment with envy as they rushed to the 7 tables. The largest number of people were naturally the students of the Mecha Driving Department and the Starship Driving Department. The next largest number of people were the students of the Starship Casting Department and the Starship Driving Department. The remaining 4 departments of Command, Logistics, Pharmacy, and Art Department, combined, were less than half of them. Especially the Art Department. At a glance, all 5 fingers were just used. The head of the Art Department, Ma Ping, had a livid face, and looked at George, Kenyi, and Tang Fan with a cold look in his eyes. There were not many students in the Department of Pharmacy. Just enough to fill an 8-person table. But the department head, Old Man Li Bangsha, was a person who went along with the situation. In addition, one of the culprits was a student of his own Department of Pharmacy, so the old man was calm and smiling like an amiable old landman. Gaozan, the head of the Department of Command, always believed in a saying, quality is more important than quantity. Looking at the dozen or so students in front of him, he felt that they were mixed, and he wanted to eliminate some of them. In fact, according to Gaozan, among the students in this class, there was only one George who is worthy of his attention. As for the Logistics Department, which ranked in the middle, its status in the Blue Ocean Mecha Academy has never been high. It has always been short of students and relies entirely on transfers. Looking at the 20 students, and then looking at the Art Department and the Pharmacy Department next door, the head of the department, CAOCUO, was quite calm. He smiled at the Mecha Driving Department, Starship Driving Department, Mecha Casting Department and Starship Casting Department, which were drowned in the crowd, and slowly handled the admission procedures for the students. Don't worry. We have plenty of time in the Logistics Department. I'll explain it to you slowly. CAOCUO's leisurely attitude made the heads of the Starship Driving Department, Mecha Casting Department and Starship Casting Department so angry that they fell backwards. You 3, please help me. CAOCUO waved his hand. No, we won't. Old Man Li Bangsha clenched his fist and pressed it against his lips. Ahem. I'm old and my body is not good. I have to prepare 2 potions to drink when I go back. Ma Ping simply didn't say anything, but just used her eyes to force everyone to retreat. Only Go Xiaogu was different. He once again picked up his own trumpet and said, students of the Mecha Driving Department, within 3 minutes, line up in a straight line according to the score list. Those who exceed the time limit will be eliminated directly. The team in front of Go Xiaogu moved quickly, and Zhao Fan and Brad were pushed to the front. Go Xiaogu looked at the neat team, nodded with satisfaction, and put on a robot, and continued, scan the downloaded files in order and read them carefully. After 3 days, all those who fail the assessment will be eliminated. There are so many students in the Mecha Driving Department, and Go Xiaogu has the right to be willful and eliminate them whenever he wants. Go Xiaogu's behavior pattern deeply stimulated the other 3 busy department heads. The 3 department heads were so jealous when they saw the trumpet in Go Xiaogu's hand that they wanted to jump up and grab it. However, thinking about the possibility of snatching something from Go Xiaogu, everyone was just jealous. However, what kind of mechanical parts has the casting department not played with? If we can't win, can't we assemble one ourselves? Soon, the deans of the Mecha Casting Department and the Starship Casting Department took action. They got 2 loudspeakers made of different materials but no less effective than Go Xiaogu. They copied the admission information into data and sent it to their respective students. It was only Lao Wang from the Starship Driving Department who had to register the students' optical computer numbers and send messages one by one. Don't think that you are done with the admission process. The school is not a charity. If you don't pay tuition and accommodation fees, you are not a student of the Blue Ocean Mecha Academy. Even if you spent money and signed up, have you read the 2 books Blue Ocean Mecha Academy History and Blue Ocean Mecha Academy School Rules that the dean gave you? The 300-page school history and 525 school rules are said to be the traditional compulsory subjects of the Blue Ocean Mecha Academy. In addition, the Blue Ocean Mecha Academy has a perverted rule that if you do not recite the Blue Ocean Mecha Academy history and write the Blue Ocean Mecha Academy school rules in full within 3 days of enrollment, the school has the right to expel students. I just want to ask you, are you convinced? Tang Fan was thinking about Tang Gang and was in no mood to pay attention to anything else. After completing the process, he took the history of Blue Ocean Mecha Academy and Blue Ocean Mecha Academy rules and left in a hurry. Chapter 50 Olivia Smith. Tang Fan was worried about Tang Gang and was in a state of confusion. However, she didn't know that Tang Gang was also paying attention to her. While lying in the treatment cabin wrapped in gauze, Tang Gang watched his daughter's exam videos in the past few days, and his expression was very complicated. Thinking back to the past, when he took the entrance exam for the Blue Sea Mecha Academy, he didn't act like his daughter. A good exam was messed up like this. Even if he got the first place, it was not necessarily a good thing. The old guys in the school certainly didn't like it, and the students' acceptance of the first place should not be much better. Tang Fan's cunning little guy should be fine, but Brad's silly boy might have to suffer a little. Tang Gang thought about it, shared these videos with William, and thanked the Duke of Rose with difficulty, then exhaled a breath of foul air and let himself faint in the treatment cabin. Seeing that Tang Gang was injured like that and still thinking about that interesting little girl, the Duke of Rose touched his chin and shook his head. He didn't quite understand this so-called fatherly love. There are not so many coincidences in this world. The little girl from the 9th level planet was able to arrive at a Blue Sea star safely from the Sangzi star, just thanks to the blessing of that unreliable father. Those who planted trees will enjoy the shade of the future generations. It's just that it was kept secret from a certain little girl. Save people to the end, send Buddha to the west. What else did Tang Gang ask him to do? The Duke of Rose touched his chin, thought for a long time, and suddenly realized that interesting little guy drank the delayed development potion for several years. He couldn't do this quietly. The Duke of Rose smiled evilly. Anyway, Tang Gang is from the Expeditionary Force, and the little girl's military training instructor is also from the Expeditionary Force. Anyway, they're all family, so just leave it to Old Man Song to worry about it. Sent 2 messages out. Then clapped his hands, hiding his merits and fame. The Duke of Rose was busy, and Tang Fan was also busy. The Blue Sea Mecha Academy history and Blue Sea Mecha Academy school rules were not difficult for Tang Fan, but he still had to memorize them, right? Although he was not as anxious as Brad and Zhao Fan, he still had to spend time. After finally passing the assessment and becoming a member of the Blue Sea Mecha Academy, the military training notice arrived. The candidates who were just immersed in the joy of being admitted to the Blue Sea Mecha Academy were suddenly shrouded in gloom. Among the 218 students in this class, the only ones who were not affected were probably Tang Fan and George, 2 monsters with excellent physical and mental strength. Monsters are monsters. Others have to memorize the school history and school rules for 3 days, but they can finish it in 1 or 2 hours. They can also highlight the key points, circle the key words, and do analysis. Monsters are monsters. Compared with their daily training, the content of the 3-month military training is just more systematic, and there is not much difference. Moreover, one of them, relying on his good cooking skills, would occasionally poison everyone by stewing tomato beef brisket pot. No one stopped her. After all, Tang Fan's roommate was one of the beneficiaries, the cute Qin Yi from the Department of Pharmacy. There are 6 buildings in the student dormitory area, 2 female dormitories and 4 male dormitories, with simple and crude names, from Building 1 to Building 6. The allocation of dormitories is even simpler and cruder, directly according to the ranking of the points list. Tang Fan and Qin Yi were naturally assigned together. Monsters will never make friends with ordinary people. Fortunately, even in the interstellar era, monsters are rare. People like George and Tang Fan, who have both physical and mental strength, are 1 in a million. Otherwise, monsters are rampant, and ordinary people will cry to death. Of course, Blue Sea Mecha Academy is not to give ordinary people a chance. After all, schools also need to eat. Even the Blue Sea Mecha Academy, which has a close relationship with the military and is known as the last chance for civilians to receive higher education, can't escape the shackles and has to release some special recruitment quotas every year. But Blue Ocean Mecha Academy is Blue Ocean Mecha Academy after all. To get its special recruitment quota, one must meet one of the following conditions. Special recommendation by the Blue Ocean Mecha Academy Bohemia Medal winner, only once in a lifetime. Recommendation by 2 or more outstanding alumni representatives of Blue Ocean Mecha Academy, 1 recommendation quota every 10 years, invalid after expiration. Joint recommendation by 2 or more in-service generals or ministerial officials, 1 recommendation quota every 10 years, invalid after expiration or resignation. Then, no more. Since the establishment of Blue Ocean Mecha Academy, there have been a total of 53 Bohemia Medal winners, of which 17 have passed away and 8 medals have been taken back. A total of 76 outstanding alumni have been selected, of which 32 have passed away, a total of 10 in-service generals of the Alliance, and a total of 25 ministerial officials. In other words, all the recommendations combined will not exceed 67 at most. Moreover, even if you get this rare and precious quota, it does not mean that you can sit back and relax. The small task of reciting the entire history of Blue Sea Mecha Academy and reciting the school rules of Blue Sea Mecha Academy from memory, the 3-month freshman military training, is still a hurdle that they cannot avoid. The only advantage is probably that they can learn the school rules and history of Blue Sea Mecha Academy in advance. Therefore, when there are few unfamiliar faces on the test side of school rules and regulations, it is not so difficult to understand. For those who come in through the back door, Tang Fan has always disdained to associate with him. But when his eyes swept over the most high-profile girl in the team, Tang Fan's eyes actually paused slightly. She was a very beautiful girl, with long brown-black hair with a slight arc, which made her face look particularly small. The eyebrows were carefully trimmed, and the eyebrow pencil was lightly swept across the tail, outlining a perfect arc. The exquisite eye makeup made the pair of phoenix eyes particularly attractive. The high bridge of the nose is slightly reflective, and there are faint traces on the wings of the nose. It seems that she wants to use the light and shadow effect to make her facial features more three-dimensional. The red lips are slightly pouted. Should it be the legendary bitten lip makeup? In order to make herself look more mature. This girl really took great pains. Thinking about what it would be like to have that makeup on his face, Tang Fan couldn't help but shudder. It is difficult for anyone to remain calm when seeing a face that is 70% similar to their own. But no matter how similar, that person will not be himself. Tang Fan quickly opened the light brain and output a line of words. Who is that woman who looks like she is wearing heavy makeup and is complacent? Hoki, who was leaning against the wall, looked sloppy and unruly, but smiled when he saw the nonsense news on the light brain. He didn't expect that after Tang Fan became the top of the Mecha casting department, he would take the initiative to get involved with him, the last one in the logistics department. If I didn't know you were a woman, I would have thought you were attracted to her by the way you looked at her. Brother, I advise you that Miss Olivia Smith already has a lover and won't be attracted to you, so just give up. Tang Fan looked at the nonsense that was very much in Hoki style and said nothing. His focus was only on one thing, Miss Olivia Smith. The lady who looked 70% similar to him was actually named Smith. What a coincidence. Since she was a proud lady, Mr. George, who took it as his mission to become a commander, should know something about her. Do you know Miss Olivia Smith? Less than a minute after Tang Fan sent the message, George's reply came. Stay away. Tang Fan knocked on the light brain and curled his lips. It seems that Miss Olivia Smith's popularity is not good. In fact, almost everyone who knew this lady avoided her, wishing to stay as far away from her as possible, and directly formed a small vacuum zone around this lady. Only Zhao Junji, who had been racking his brains to persuade his sister to leave Blue Sea Mecha Academy, smiled sincerely the moment he saw Olivia Smith. It was not because he loved Olivia Smith so much, but because the opportunity to persuade Zhao Jingshu to leave Blue Sea Mecha Academy had finally come. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.